Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a hormonal rivalry part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story iBeymax from AO3. So let's start the video. A rude introduction. Chapter text. Are you crazy? Last time I checked, not particularly. You weave between the desks in your class. Then what's this? The short girl in front of you held up a piece of paper covered in names that she hastily ripped off a wall. It's a list of names. You sighed looking at the time on your phone. Look, I've really got to get going. You tried to move around her but were stopped when she shot her arm out in front of you. Oh no you don't. Why is your name on here under all the other Hero Course kids? Aya's finger accusatorially stabbed at your name on the list with all the intensity a chick who looked like a cupcake could. Aya, you know I've been wanting to get into the Hero Course and this is my chance. You pinched the bridge of your nose, starting to feel a headache nagging at the back of your skull. Why are you so surprised? I thought you would have changed your mind after that when a class got attacked. What if something happened to you? She practically shrieked. You tried to calm her down, but she was talking at a mile a minute. You needed to stop her in her tracks. Quick. You barely scored any points on that physical exam to get into UA. Hey, that's not okay. Ouch, low blow. What if there's another attack? What if you got caught in it? Aya. You grabbed her shoulders, trying to ground her in reality again. God, this was going worse than expected. The only reason I didn't pass the first time around was because we were up against those damn bots, alright? In case you didn't know already, the kids in the festival are all human and I'll be just fine going against them. I'll probably get to the top with barely a scratch, come on. You smirked, playfully bumping her shoulder. Aya's normally jubilant face was stuck in what was her best attempt at a scowl. In all honesty, she looked more like a kicked puppy than anything else. But, she piped in. Eyebrows knit together. Nope, nah. I'm doing this and I'm gonna kick their collective asses. You'd finally made your way to the door and slipped out ahead of your friend. The hall was an absolute mess. Kids flooded out of their classrooms yelling, laughing, all bumping into each other. It looked like a damn zoo. You had the special misfortune of having your homeroom class be at the very opposite end of the school building and therefore the school exit. For a school whose specialty was shaping the world's next heroes, the Gen Ed course wasn't too bad. It just wasn't anything special, mostly just forgotten about. The support, business, and hero courses got all the funding and most of the school's perks like the outrageously decked out gyms, insanely expensive training areas, thousands of dollars worth of gear and job prep, and they were always at the forefront of everyone's mind, especially the hero course. General education was more of an afterthought, and the position of your classroom cemented that idea. It was basically the culmination of people who wanted the prestige of UA's name on their college transcript and people, like you, that didn't quite pass the entrance exam. You started your long trek down the hallway. Sure, you expected the entrance exam to be difficult, but to just favor strength-based quirks over everything else was completely idiotic. No wonder the government has to shill out thousands each year on property damage. The system used to create heroes only focused on meatheads obsessed with destruction. Honestly, you scoffed. I'd think someone like Nizu would have some appreciation towards. Like hell I am. The feeling of your eardrum popping pulled you out of your daze, making you pause in front of the one classroom, a decision you'd likely regret in about 3 seconds. Bakugou, you must conduct yourself in an orderly manner. You could hear muffled squabbling beyond the door. Fuck off. The door flew open and hit you square in the face, knocking you on your ass almost immediately. As you let out a string of curses, your vision went momentarily black and the sounds around you became muddled. Well, that definitely helped your headache. Fucking hell. What was that for? As the spots finally started to clear from your vision, you looked up to see the door hanging by its hinge, sporting a rather impressive head-shaped dent, along with the asshole responsible for your skull-breaking headache, or your broken skull. At that point, you couldn't exactly tell which it was. You gonna apologize, or what, dickhead? You spat, less than gracefully standing back on your feet. I think you gave me a fucking concussion. The hell did you call me? The blurry image of some blonde kid slowly sharpened up as he got uncomfortably close. The fuck are you angry at me for? You lost your balance slightly, readjusting your foot to catch yourself. I'm the one that got hit in the face with a fucking door. Apparently, shifting your stance was taken as a challenge by the man in front of you as he doubled down with insults and closed the distance between you. The ringing in your ears drowned out his incessant yelling. As you lost your balance again, you put your hand on his shoulder in a futile attempt to balance yourself. You groaned, "God, you're loud," resting your free hand over your eyes, trying to take a step forward. "Could you move? I've got somewhere to be." "Don't tell me what to do, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, he growled, malice practically dripping off his words. "Kakin, please." A green-haired boy behind him was panically moving his hands faster than light in random directions, slightly shrinking when the blonde whipped his head around and barked at him. Just sighing, you stumbled forward, grabbing his shoulder to stabilize yourself. The day had been long enough, and you hadn't been able to get a good night's sleep in what felt like weeks. You could feel the sheer weight under your eyes pulling your face down. You glared up at him slightly. "If you're not gonna apologize," you groaned. "Move aside. Kakin, was it?" His eyes narrowed as you slightly pushed yourself past him. You could hear popping, yelling, and hyena-like laughter as you made your way past the one classroom and finally reached the gate. "Faster! You can do better than that," your coach yelled as he upped the speed on your treadmill. Your feet were practically flying with the speed at which they were being pushed. The sound of your sneakers hitting the treadmill filled the small gym as you ran for your goddamn life, trying to keep up with your trainer. The rhythmic thudding suddenly interrupted as you tripped over your untied shoelace and rocketed backwards, hitting the back wall with a boom, air flying out of your lungs. "That's all you got," a voice boomed over your head. You fell forward onto your knees, catching yourself before you face planted for a second time today. You wheezed. "Running at 20 miles per hour. Another wheeze. "For 20 minutes. What do you mean that all I got?" Coughing as you tried to desperately take back the air that ran from your lungs. "Stop complaining. Head to the ring." A couple years ago you had befriended 𝗧𝗃𝗃, the son of a man who owned the gym that was now the center for whatever inhumane torture you were experiencing. As you got older, 𝗧𝗃𝗃's dad gave you a free pass to the gym, trying to justify it by saying your quirk made it so you needed to work out. He wasn't entirely wrong. While not the most useful for physically overwhelming opponents, your quirk had some use for helping others. Your power allowed you to hijack another person's hormonal balances through physical touch. Without the proper training you really needed, you could only safely control someone's melatonin levels in small doses of oxytocin and serotonin. Your quirk basically worked like a pulley system. When making someone fall asleep, you became wide awake. Trying to make someone else feel better with an extra bump of serotonin sucked it out of your system. Depending on the situation, it could be an incredibly taxing power, especially with the insomnia it could cause. A couple months ago, you'd overheard 𝗧𝗃𝗃's dad talk about 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃's kid sister, night terrors, and issues sleeping. While you had still lived with your parents and little brother, you had used your quirk to lull your brother to sleep when he would cry at night, trying to give your poor parents a break. You had offered to do the same for 𝗵𝗃𝗃, partly out of nostalgia and partly as a way to give back to 𝗧𝗃𝗃's family. You had used your quirk to help her sleep through the night, supplementing the uneven production of melatonin in her system with your own, and easing her nightmares by giving her small and safe doses of serotonin. It had left you feeling absolutely spent, but seeing the smile on 𝗵𝗃𝗃's face after she'd gotten her first restful sleep in weeks was worth it. Being able to use the gym helped supplement the serotonin you'd given to 𝗵𝗃𝗃 anyway, so it was fine in your book. You partially thought he gave you the pass as a way to make sure 𝗧𝗃𝗃 wasn't alone all the time. After a few weeks of training with 𝗧𝗃𝗃, he had learned of your intentions to move up into the hero course at your school and took it upon himself to train you for the sports festival. He was a boxing champion in the high school quirkless division of Japan, so you decided to take him up on his offer. Again, you had entered the ring with him and were currently draped across the tethers around the rink, trying desperately to catch your breath and covered in bruises. Your hands had been wrapped to protect your knuckles, but your shorts and a tank top did nothing to dull the impact of 𝗧𝗃𝗃's hits. He stood in front of you with his fists up, dressed in black, high-waisted boxing shorts and bright red sneakers. "I said again," He lunged forward, leading with a jab. You ducked and scrambled out of the way, trying to avoid a third fucking head injury in one day. I told you to chill for today. What the hell is wrong with you? You panted, trying to keep your fists in front of your face. He landed another jab, trying to break up your defense. The hit was solid and powerful, making you skid across the mat. You think a villain would care? He circled you, making you pivot to keep up with his erratic and predatory movement. A villain doesn't fight fair, he spat, faking another jab but nailing you in the side with a hook, watching as you crumpled to the floor, heaving. You felt your vision go red as you pushed your weight into your knuckles. I'm sick of being tossed around, finding solid ground beneath your feet. You stood up again and readied your stance. That's it, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 lowered his stance. Come at me. I'm sick of being tossed aside. You hit him again and again with everything you could. I won't go down. What was that? Speak up, pipsqueak. He jeered, an evil smirk pulling at his lips. I won't go down, you yelled. You spun, launching your leg out for a roundhouse and hitting his ribcage, making him stumble backwards. Good. He boomed. We'll call it here for today. All the energy you had left flowed out of you into the floor as you lay down like a starfish, staring at the gray ceiling. You felt your head swimming with exhaustion when something cold tapped against your face. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 sat down on the mat, holding a cold bottle of water next to your temple, waiting for you to take it. Apparently, you had taken too long, so he poured a bit over your face. I know you were doing that to be a dick, but it actually helped a bit. You swiped the bottle out of his hand and used every fiber of your being to prop yourself up on your elbow to take a swig, doing your best not to choke. The cold water had washed away the mass amount of sweat that gathered on your face, making you feel slightly less like dead. You're getting better. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 was looking straight ahead as he drank some sort of tonic. I actually broke a sweat this time. You groaned as your head hit the mat again. Don't patronize me. He set down his drink, sighing. I'm not. I'm at least a couple weight classes above you, and you landed some solid hits. Without one of those stupid quirks. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 had been in a similar situation as you were. Born without a quirk, he was constantly harassed by classmates and the people around him in elementary school because he was seen as weak. It's actually how the two of you met. You had seen him limping around the park as a kid and took him to your mom to get him all bandaged up. He had tears in his eyes and kept sniffling but denied he was crying as you led him by the hand home. Once the two of you were in middle school, he started to seriously take up boxing and dedicated all of his time to it. When's your big fight? The festival? It's in a couple days. You chugged more water and felt stray drops fall down your chin. Why? You dragged yourself to the corner of the ring to sit up and drink properly. I'm coming. You choked, spitting water on yourself. Fucking great. I'm sorry, you're what? You stared at him in disbelief. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 had never expressed any sort of sentiment like this before. He'd never once shown interest in your involvement at UA, and to suddenly come to the biggest festival they hosted? It was weird to be sure. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 crossed his arms defensively as he continued, a good coach goes to their fighters' matches. He let out a small sigh. Besides, 𝗵𝗃 wants to see you again. You stammered. Suddenly losing in the sports festival had much more weight to it. Oh God, if I don't make it far, I'll never hear the end of it. It's not as if you expected yourself to completely fail the second you stepped foot in the festival, but your anonymity gave you a small sense of comfort. While you could puff out your ego a bit around 𝗧𝗵𝗃 had a nasty habit of seeing through your bullshit. It could be rather inconvenient at times. Times like now, in fact. What, you don't want me to come? White indents on his arms started to appear as his grip tightened, nails digging into his bicep. He was nervous, maybe? Unfortunately, as he got older, he got more difficult to read. It's not that, idiot. It kinda was. I'll just send you the info later, yeah? Your muscles burned as you hoisted yourself up to your feet and headed to the shower room. I'm gonna clean up and head out. You should do the same. Damn, gym rat. You tossed the towel that had been around your neck at him. It made a satisfying wet slap noise as it hit him square in the face. He let out a string of curses in disgust as you ducked around the corner and into the shower room. All the contestants had congregated in the center of the sports arena, anxiously awaiting the start of the festival. For the kids in the hero and support courses, It was a chance to show off their strengths to agencies on national television. The whole thing was a massive publicity stunt, used to show off the full capabilities of the school and its students. It pulled attention from every other school in Japan and was probably one of the reasons both the public and hero society valued it so immensely. In light of the USJ attack, you would have thought that they'd postpone or cancel the event. One of the negatives of the festival was that it didn't just broadcast the students' strengths, it also showed them exploiting each other's weaknesses. It was a massive double-edged sword, but it seems like the school thought the positives it provided outweighed the negatives. Believe it or not, you're at an advantage. You remembered your conversation moments prior with Aiko? The hero courses have already trained with each other. They know what to expect when they fight each other. They won't see you coming. I'll only have the element of surprise during the first round of the one-on-ones. If I just grab my opponent's head and knock him out the second I touch them, my advantage is gone. Shit, you're right. I usually am, you hummed. What if I tried masking it as a strength-based quirk, something like 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗵 boxing? We'll leave the tips of my knuckles and tops of my feet out of the wraps, and I'll aim for body shots. Depending on where I make contact, my quirk can work fast or slow. I'll aim for a mix of body and head shots and try to knock them out after a couple of solid hits. It'll make it look like I KO'd them. That, he paused, holding his chin in his hand. That might actually work, damn. How confident are you with shit other than the sleep trick? Not enough confident enough to risk doing long-term damage to them or me, you grumbled. Then keep your quirk to its basic levels. That was the plan, coach. With that, it was decided. The best course of action was to hide what your quirk actually was, trying to mask it as something else and deceiving your opponents and onlookers. The static of a microphone pulled you out of your memory and brought everyone's attention towards the main stage. Midnight welcomed everyone to the festival and brought up a student to say a few words. Hey, isn't that Kakin kid? You mumbled. Apparently what you had said was incredibly hilarious to the redhead and blonde next to you, who began to laugh uncontrollably. To your surprise, you had been standing within earshot of the hero course. What did you call him? You looked over towards the blonde who was wiping tears away from his eyes. Kakin, you paused, staring at the duo in front of you. He's the kid that hit me with the fucking door, isn't he? I heard some green-haired kid call him that. The blonde tried desperately to keep a straight face as he confirmed that, yes, his preferred name to be called was Kakin. I'm Denki Kaminari, by the way. He stretched his hand towards you with a goofy smile on his face. You met him halfway, shaking his hand with one eyebrow raised. This is Kirishima. The boy next to him wore a wide smile practically reaching from ear to ear, showing off his sharp teeth and wrinkling his eyes adorably. It's nice to meet you. What class are you from? Nice to meet you too. I'm a Gen Ed student. The names? You were cut off when you heard Kakin over the mic. I pledge, he paused for a moment, that I'll be number one. The class next to you looked absolutely horrified as you involuntarily let out the loudest snort of your life. This kid is fucking hilarious. You tried to contain your laughter, but as the boos and screams of opposition continued when he stalked back down the stairs, you absolutely lost it. You keeled over laughing, clutching your stomach. The guy may be an utter dick, but my God, you had to give it to him. That was funny. Bakugou pushed past the people in front of him, shoulder-checking the green-haired kid in his path. As he walked past you, you lightly slapped his back. Great way to make friends, Kakin. Before he had a chance to react, Midnight tried to take control of the crowd again and announced the first round of the competition, an obstacle course. So far, everything had gone moderately well. After miraculously surviving the foot race, you realized the fact students actually made it to graduation was an even greater miracle than you had previously thought. Aiko's brutal training had kept you fast and dexterous, allowing you to stay towards the front of the mob. You'd started off relatively well, being positioned towards the front and behind the 1A students. You had been behind a girl with black hair that could shoot an entire staff out of her hand. Grabbing onto the staff a couple of feet behind her let you use her as some sort of launch pad. By the time your feet made contact with the ground again, a few people had overtaken you, including the Bakugou and a kid with white and red hair. You'd managed to stay ahead of the raging mass of students clawing at each other for a second's edge. You took off running, feeling the wind and cold air was past you. You could hear people screaming as they fell into the water underneath the tight ropes. You'd slid underneath the big zero-pointer robots from the entrance exam using ice another student had laid in front of you, barely avoiding the falling robot. I hope 𝗧𝗵𝗲 didn't see those. She'd hold it over my head for ages. Honestly, the easiest portion of the race was the minefield because 𝗧𝗵𝗃 blew half of it up already, and the mines were pretty obviously buried and evenly spaced. You'd managed to cross the finish line a couple of seconds ahead of Kirishima, landing yourself a place in the top 15, passing to the next round with flying colors. The cavalry battle was slightly more difficult. With the mass elimination of the last round, most of your classmates had been left in the dust, with only one other Gen Ed student still in the running, Shinso. The other 40 people still in the race were mostly from either Class 1A or 1B, with a sprinkling of support corps students. Most had coagulated into groups the second the game was announced, so your options dwindle quickly. Apparently, Midoriya, the green-haired boy from before, finished first in the race and was saddled with 1 million points. All eyes turned to the boy, very few of which were friendly. Stealing his total would guarantee you a spot in the finals, practically saddling him with a cartoonish red target on his back. Deciding to avoid shouldering that target on your own shoulders, you headed over to Shinso, who had scored 80 points. Combined with your 150, it wasn't a bad start. As some of the final teams cemented, you were able to grab Ojiro from 1A, a boy with a massive tail and a respectable 160 points, and some miscellaneous blue-haired kid with 50 points, giving you a total of 440, ranking you 5th highest from the get-go. Sweet. You looked at the group around you. Luckily for us, most of the loudmouths from the hero courses are ahead of us and pulling the most attention. You looked over to Ojiro for a second. Sorry, no offense intended. He waved his hand at you, signaling it was all right even as his tail twitched. How do we want to arrange ourselves? After minor disagreements, Shinso was put up top with Ojiro and Blue Boy in the rear and you, front and center, leading the charge. You would have preferred to have Tail Boy in front, but he made the argument that you were more agile. Once the game started, the 4 of you took off, going after the smaller, 2-person teams, hoping to score enough easy points to put you out on top while most of the attention was being hogged by Bakugou and Midoriya's teams. The 𝗧𝗵𝗲 kid pulled the same stunt as he did in the obstacle course, freezing as many groups in place as possible the second the game had started. You'd guessed this would be one of the first moves of the game before it had started and warned your team. For the most part, you dodged it, but the blue kid got his foot stuck. Ojiro whacked the ice with his tail, and you were good to go again. You had landed a couple of square hits against the base students for the 2-pair teams, discombobulating them enough without your quirk where Shinso could pull off their headbands and secure them for your team. By the time the match was over, your admittedly slightly cheap tactics had paid off and you'd advanced to the next round. Hey, you weren't half bad, man. You playfully hit Shinso's lower arm, still high on adrenaline. You're in Class 3 of Gen Ed, right? He looked down at you, replying slightly hesitantly, I am. You brushed your hand against the skin on his forearm. With the skin contact, you drained a small portion of oxytocin from your bloodstream into his, trying to get him to trust you even slightly. We did really well together up there. Pretty impressive going against those hero course kids, huh? You did your best to keep your voice upbeat and lighthearted. After a small bit of small talk, you could see him physically relax. The oxytocin's working. Should I ask now? I don't think I saw you use your quirk while you were up there. What is it? You hoped that the amount you gave him was enough to make him trust you enough to answer. Brainwashing, he said simply. Fuck, that sounds dangerous. You were about to continue your questioning when Present Mike came over the loudspeaker as if he needed anything to boost his voice, and finally announced the final round of the festival and a much-needed break. When you turned your attention back to Shinso, he had already started walking away. You mumbled a brief curse under your breath and headed towards the vending machine. You hummed as you looked over the drink options, strawberry or regular. With the unbreakable concentration needed to choose which to get, you had completely zoned out until a small child came running at you. She collided with your side at full force, making you select strawberry as you lurched forward, almost knocking you over as your strawberry drink fell out with a thud. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, calm down. You looked over to see Aiko jogging to keep up with his little sister. The sound of his boots hitting the cement echoed through the hall. You'd finally gotten a hold of the little ball of energy that was 𝗵𝗃𝗀 and held her on your hip. You were so cool out there. 𝗵𝗃𝗀 threw her hands up in excitement, mimicking how you beat the teams around you in the cavalry battle. You were like zoom, pow, snatch. It was so cool. You laughed watching how excited she was as you set her back down on the floor. You know I'm the best there is, kiddo. After tapping the bill of her green cap, you looked up at Aiko, smirking. How'd I do, coach? Not bad, he admitted begrudgingly. Anyone catch on yet? Not that I could see. Stayed away from the limelight for the most part. My big impressions are gonna come during the one-on-ones. You grabbed the strawberry milk out of the machine and poked the straw in it. Oh, you have the pills? Aiko fumbled around in his satchel, trying to find the melatonin supplements you had asked for amongst all the shit he had to carry for his sister. God, where's the damn? He trailed off before finally finding the pill bottle and pulling it out. Catch. He tossed the bottle in your general direction. You sure about this? Absolutely. My body can only produce enough melatonin to knock one person out. If all goes well, I need to fight 3 different rounds. You shoved the bottle into your pocket, glancing both ways to see if anyone was coming. Don't take them all at once, he warned as he tried to gather his sister. You see who you're going up against first? Yeah, a girl named. You paused. Names were not your strong suit. 𝗵𝗃𝗲, I think. She's the pink one with horns. You stuck your fingers up through your hair to illustrate your point. I saw her. She's got some acid thing going on. I saw her dissolve through one of those robo-bitches. He bent down to pick up 𝗵𝗃𝗀 again and fished around in his bag for some toy to give her. This is going to be a painful round, isn't it? You grimaced. I mean, she is in the hero course, so she probably won't melt you down to the bone. His attempt at making you feel better just deepened your scowl. I've got a little spare time before my match, so I'm gonna go try to come up with a plan. You started walking down the hall, waving to Aiko and 𝗵𝗃𝗀 as you turned the corner. Unsurprisingly, they didn't have a section for the Gen Ed students to wait if they made it this far. I see they have a lot of confidence in all their students, you sighed as you headed up the stairs towards the balconies. My best bet is to just go into the first door I see. I don't want to waste my time and miss the matches. It seems that fate was very intent on making you run into your biggest competitors again and again. The door creaked open and you pushed your way through, drawing the attention of almost every single Class 1A member. You tried to gracefully back out into the hallway again when you heard Kirishima's lighthearted voice call you. Hey, you're that Gen Ed kid, right? Come over. He enthusiastically waved you over to where he was sitting with Kaminari and the pink girl you were going to face. Fuck, guess I'm stuck here now. You awkwardly shuffled down the stairs to their second-row seats and sat next to Kirishima. Kaminari leaned forward slightly to look at you, his eyes going slightly wide before he raised one eyebrow and smiled. Hey, you're pretty cute. Out of all the things you expected to hear when you sat down, that was, admittedly, not one of them. Luckily, Kirishima sensed your slight unease and chirped in. Hey, I don't think we got your name last time. What is it? His entire demeanor was weirdly warm, considering you had seen him headbutt the shit out of some of the 1B kids about 10 minutes ago. Name's Document. You held out your hand and did your best to match his warm smile. He seemed the pretty trusting sort, but you still wanted to do your best to look unintimidating for the time being, especially with Pinky next to you. Oh, a handshake. Manly. The dude took your hand and shook it enthusiastically, his grip almost bone-crushing. Sorry, I'm a little excited. He gave you a sheepish smile and rubbed the back of his neck. It's all right, you responded, rubbing your now sore hand. You looked over slightly towards 𝗵𝗃𝗲. Hey, I don't think we've met. You sent her another warm smile, and she shot back her own. We haven't. She chirped. How do they all have so much energy? I'm Mina Ishido. I was close. Nice to meet ya and can't wait to beat ya. Her voice was practically swimming in excitement, and you couldn't sense any malice. The 3 of them sent beaming smiles in your direction. You were pretty sure that if you looked at them for too long your retinas would burn. I'll try to make it interesting for you at least. Present mixed screech of an introduction signaled the beginning of a fight between Midoriya and Shinso. You couldn't quite make out what they were saying, but Midoriya suddenly went rigid as he walked towards the edge of the rink. Kirishima yelled in the general direction of the fight, Midoriya! Bro, what are you doing? Brainwashing, huh? So this is what he meant. You leaned back into your seat expecting the match to be done in a matter of seconds. You started to strategize ways to take 𝗵𝗃 down quickly. She's got a lean build, so she'll probably be pretty agile. I'll have to take all the shots I can get when she's in range. As you ran through scenarios in your head, midnight called the match and cheers erupted around you. Kirishima, 𝗵𝗃, and Kaminari all jumped up in support of their friend, and someone had scoffed behind you. You looked down at the arena to see Shinso had been thrown out, and if his posture suggested anything, he was positively livid. What the hell did I miss? Midoriya walked towards the building, cupping his hand. The fight took all of 2 minutes. If that was any indication for the rest of the matches, you'd have about 6 more minutes until your fight. The fight between elbows and Todoroki spit in the face of your estimate. 𝗧𝗪𝙢 pulled the same move for the 3rd time in a row, but something must have pissed him off cause the fucker froze half of the stadium along with Tape Boy. Hell, he'd barely missed the 4 of you sitting on the balcony. I'm going to take that as my cue to leave. You carefully stood up from your seat, not wanting to hit your head on the ice. I'll see you out there, 𝗵𝗃. You sent her a small smile and a wave as you headed out. The next 2 fights were rather uneventful in your opinion. Kaminari got thrown out of the rink by some religious nut, and one of the support course students used Engine Boy as a showcase before surrendering. Honestly, it was a pretty good use of her circumstances. She'd made it this far and used the festival as a way to broadcast what she could make across Japan. She was definitely memorable to be sure, and she boosted her opponent into the next round. A win-win situation if you weren't super uptight. You headed towards the arena, grabbing the pills from your pocket and cracking it between your teeth. As long as the melatonin was in your system, you could transfer it, and the pill took about half an hour for you to digest. So as long as you transferred all of it within that time frame, you wouldn't feel a thing. As you stepped out of the building, the sun practically blinded you as it glistened in the puddles left behind by the man-made iceberg. You double-checked the wraps around your fists and feet, making sure everything was secure and as protected as it could be with the modifications you had made. 𝗵𝗃 reached the arena first and was hopping from side to side, throwing shadow punches at the air excitedly as she waited for you. As you stepped into the rink, Present Mike yelled out your introductions and classes before midnight gave the final go-ahead before the match. Aiko's voice rang in your head. She used some sort of slick to move quickly during the race, and she'll probably do the same in the one-on-ones. His assessment was spot on. 𝗵𝗃 came directly towards you, using the acid from her feet to glide across the dirt of the arena at an impressive speed. You lowered your stance, grounding yourself, pivoting in time to miss her first attack, using the opening to send a solid jab into her ribcage. Shit, no skin, but I knocked her off course. 𝗵𝗃 stumbled to regain balance while gathering a handful of acid and flinging it in your direction. Shit, you cursed, as some landed cleanly on your shoulder, burning at the fabric and irritating your skin. Didn't know you could do long range. Impressive? You remarked. Keep it light. Keep her unsuspecting.
Thanks,
she chirped, sliding towards you again. Right arm tucked by her side, hand in a fist, she was going for an uppercut. You managed to lean back far enough to dodge her attack. You swerved and got a clean hit to the side of her head, transferring all the melatonin in your system into hers the second your fist made contact. Adrenaline surged to replace your lost melatonin, sharpening your senses and reaction speed. You sent an uppercut into the pit of her stomach, sending her up and backward to sell the idea of a boxing quirk. She lay on the ground, out like a light. You walked over to where she was fast asleep, grabbing her arm, her body draped over your back. Carrying her to the edges of the rink, you threw her out of bounds, her body hitting the ground with a thud. You winced at the sound and muttered a slight apology. Midnight raised her whip to the sky and announced you as the winner. Paramedics raced towards 𝗵𝗃's body, hoisting her onto a gurney and marching back into the dark halls of the stadium building, and you followed shortly behind. Placing your hand on her arm, you slowly drew the sleep out of her system and returned it back into your own body for your next match. Your next fight was against 𝗃𝗄𝗵𝗄, a bird boy with a long-ranged, shadow-based quirk. The kids in 1A didn't seem to be highly unpredictable so far, and you hoped that trend would continue. In his fight against Staff Girl, he'd stayed in the same spot, using his shadow to push her out of bounds. That probably meant he didn't actually want to hurt his opponent, but rather wanted to end the match quickly. You were sitting in one corner of the stadium in front of a TV, nestled between a wall and a vending machine. You decided against going back to the 1A balcony, considering you just beat one of their classmates and unceremoniously dropped her body off the side of the rink. Something about that would probably result in a less than welcoming environment if you showed up out of the blue again. As you traced notes in your hand with your finger, you mumbled, "Would my quirk even work against a shadow? Is it technically living? It can't really be a shadow if it has mass and can move things. So what is it exactly?" "Shut it," a voice echoed through the hallway. "Your voice is annoying just like that damn nerd's." Momentarily brought out of your planning, you turned to see Bakugou stalk towards you, walking like he had an immense itch by his groin but refused to scratch it. He'd stopped by the vending machine and dug through his pockets to find some change to put in. "Oh, Kakin, hey, how's your pledge going?" You looked back towards the TV and tried to continue your planning only to be interrupted, again by his yelling. "The fuck did you call me?" He turned towards you, red eyes narrowing into slits as his scowl miraculously deepened. "Kakin," you said again, quite matter-of-factly, "it's what Kaminari said your name was. He's your classmate, isn't he?" "Don't fucking call me that, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏." You could see his fist clench and sparks fly out of the corner of your eye. Man, this dude really did have a temper, didn't he? Wanting to keep your fights to where they could be adequately judged, you decided to back off slightly. "Fine, fine. Your last name was something like Bakugou, wasn't it?" You sighed as your previous train of thought escaped you. "Pretty sure you still owe me an apology. Just thinking about it again made your head ache. As if I'd apologized to some extra." He scoffed, aggressively hitting the buttons on the vending machine. "Saw the cheap moves you pulled during the cavalry battle. Extra? What is this, some sort of TV set?" You leaned your head against the wall. "Think you're some sort of main character?" It'd explain whatever complex you got going on here. You held out your hand, vaguely gesturing towards him. "Besides, my plan worked, didn't it? I'm on the same level as your boisterous ass." You heard your name over the stadium speakers. "Please head towards the waiting room for your fight." "Fuck, you wasted my time." You stood up, dusting off your pants, and patting your pocket to make sure the pills were still there. "Now, if you'll excuse me." You tried to make your way past him but were stopped in your tracks as he shot his arm out, cornering you. "Shit, he was big." "Like hell you are," he growled. The whole scenario gave you déjà vu. You put your hand on his arm, trying to lower it to step past, but the fucker barely moved. Plan A didn't seem to be budging. Next idea. "You want to fight now?" Thinking back to the stunt he pulled at the beginning of the festival. "No one's here to watch. You gain nothing." You stared him dead in the eye, watching for any sort of reaction, and continued. "If I walk out there with new bruises or dents that weren't there from my last fight, they'll track back to you. You'd probably get disqualified." His eyebrow twitched. "Gotcha." You cleared your throat. "Like I said before, if you'll excuse me." He'd momentarily relaxed his arms, giving just enough slack for you to force your way past. "I'll have plenty of time to kick your ass in front of a crowd later." 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 stood at the edge of the arena, hands in his pockets as he waited for you. You took your final step into the rink as the match began. "Dark Shadow." A dark mass shot out of his stomach, heading directly towards you, not giving you any time to get out of the way. Dark Shadow collided directly with your gut, knocking the wind out of you and pushing you back several feet. You briefly glanced down at your feet to make sure you were still in the running. That would have been embarrassing. Another hit directly to your stomach, and suddenly you were in the air, holding onto Dark Shadow's face for dear life. You tried desperately to flood the Shadow's system with enough melatonin to knock out a giant cold, but the creature barely slowed down. Your eyes darted from side to side, desperately looking for a way to win the fight as you were whipped around midair. Finally, you got an idea. A stupid, long shot of an idea that could shatter your ankles if you fucked up, but an idea nonetheless. Dark Shadow's movement wasn't as erratic as you first believed. It seemed to follow a consistent pattern that gave you a 3-second interval if you wanted to drop in front of 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏. You scrambled up Dark Shadow's face as best you could, its claws desperately trying to rip you off and send you to an early grave by the looks of it as you planted your feet on its shoulders. You pushed yourself forward, skidding down the tether tying it to 𝗧𝗵𝗲 body before completely free falling for the last 10 feet. You rolled as you hit the ground, transferring your vertical ankle-shattering energy into rotational energy to semi-cushion your fall, landing on your feet a foot away from 𝗧𝗧𝗵𝗲. You jumped in the air and kicked both feet out towards 𝗧𝗧𝗵𝗲, hitting him square in the chest and just barely knocking him out of bounds as you collided with the floor. You stayed still for a moment coughing before lifting your hand up and giving Midnight a thumbs up signaling that you could, in fact, still move after whatever movie stunt you managed to pull off. While 𝗧𝗧𝗵𝗲 had left practically unharmed, you could feel your ribs, arm, and shoulder bruising from the hits you'd taken. You did your best to stand tall and walk off into the building as cameras followed you. Don't fall, almost there. Don't fall. The second you rounded the corner and escaped the camera's gaze, your body collapsed as you crumpled to the ground holding onto your side. That's gonna leave a mark, you wheezed. Luckily, someone had the forethought to have the nurse's office be close to the arena on the ground floor, and you hobbled your way over. "Oh, sugar, I was wondering if you'd come and visit me." A small, elderly woman waved you into what you had assumed was her office. "They really put too much pressure on you kids. Now let me take a good look at you." "I think I bruised my rib," you coughed. "Yup, that looks about right. Come lay down, lay down." She patted the gurney next to a sleeping Mina, and you felt somewhat guilty. As you lay down, you felt a wet kiss on your cheek. Whipping your head around, you saw her mouth shrink back to its normal position on her face. What was? You suddenly felt exhausted, like all the events of the day had caught up to you and ran you over like a bulldozer. "God, I'm tired." You lay your head down as all your limbs turned into lead. "Healing takes stamina, dearie." She fished around in her desk drawer and pulled out a stash of chocolate bars, handing you a rather sizable Snickers. "You'll need to regain your energy before your next match, won't you?" You gathered every fiber of your being, every ounce of your willpower, pouring everything you had into reaching out and grabbing the unwrapped chocolatey savior she held out in front of you. You sunk your teeth into the bar, savoring the mix of sweet milk chocolate and caramel with salted peanuts as you chewed. Aiko hadn't let you have any sugar since your training because of some tortuous protein, carb, and fat diet, so the taste of it almost brought you to tears. "It's just a Snickers bar, darling. Will you be all right?" You nodded, taking another bite and falling into complete bliss. 15 minutes had passed before the nurse's doors flew open and a broken 𝗵𝗃 was wheeled in and placed on the gurney next to you. A tall, sickly, blond man following him inside. One arm and leg had been turned comically purple, and you winced at the mere sight of it. Had his opponent done that to him? I didn't think that Todoroki kid had it in him. You crooked your head to the side to stare at him, trying to guess what the hell had happened. Without being noticed, he squeaked out a weak, "Recovery girl," before being hushed and told to relax. Recovery girl's mouth stretched forward, and it was as disturbing watching it from the sidelines as receiving the smooch itself. Recovery girl had made quick work of setting the bones in his arm, equipping him with a sling, and wrapping a stint around his leg. "I need to remove pieces of bone to make sure they don't stay in your joints." Suddenly, your bruised rib cage seemed like a sprained pinky in comparison. "God, that sounds disgusting. I'll have to be careful in my next round." For students burst through the nurse's door. "Midoriya, Deku." You recognized a couple of them from both the balcony and your quick look into the 1A classroom from a few days ago. There were two incredibly adorable girls, one with long green hair tied in a bow, a finger on her mouth and tongue peeking out from underneath her top lip, one with shorter brown hair, bangs, and incredibly round features. She looked like a bubble. Behind the two girls was the boy who had yelled at Bakugou about manners with large square glasses and pointed eyebrows. Below the three of them was a tiny boy with purple bulbs for hair that barely came up to the base of both girls' rib cages. At this point, loud interruptions should have been fully expected considering the sheer amounts of times you'd been aggressively brought out of your train of thought. But nonetheless, you still lurched slightly in surprise, groaning loud as you sat up. Recovery girl shooed the group out back into the hallway before checking you over again to make sure your ribs had healed enough to fight. "They really do push your poor students too much." She sighed as you swung your legs over the side of the bed to stand. "The last fight caused quite the mess." She shot the blonde man a glare. so you'll have a little bit of time before your fight." You thanked her and quietly closed the door behind you. That brunette looked familiar. Why? You searched through your memories trying to figure out why she had stuck out to you. I mean, she was cute, but that can't be it. Tapping your index finger against your lips, it finally hit you. "𝗬𝗧𝗪𝗧!" you semi-yelled out, startling the poor girl as she turned around on a dime. "Can I help you?" You jogged up to her side, brushing your hand against her forearm in an attempt to pull the same plan you had with Shinso. "You fought against Bakugou in the first round, didn't you? You were amazing out there." Her slightly defensive pose melted when you complimented her. "I was really rooting for you. Your creativity was ingenious." The round blush on her cheeks grew as she laughed. "Thank you. I just wish I could have lasted longer in the festival." She looked slightly downwards, her smile wavering slightly. "I was wondering if you could tell me about anything about his quirk?" You prayed the oxytocin was enough to make her trust you even a smidge. You didn't think you could give away any more before feeling the effects of its withdrawal, and the idea of going into a match riddled with even more anxiety didn't sound like the best action plan. You could already feel doubt itching at the back of your brain, and it was annoying enough as is. "You're the boxing girl, right?" Sending out a fake 1-2 punch as she said it. "Seems like your branding had worked. Bakugou can get angry pretty fast, and his quirk can hurt his muscles. Does that help?" You beamed at her and thanked her with the biggest smile you could muster. The three people around her looked slightly stunned that she would give out information on your possible opponent. Getting information on Bakugou turned out to be a good use of your time when Present Mike and 𝗬𝗧𝗪𝗧 announced the semi-final pairings. "You're going against the hothead, huh?" Aiko sat down next to you, the bench creaking under his weight. "Yup," you sighed. "This was definitely going to be difficult. Where's 𝗵𝗃𝗃? Pops picked her up after the fight between those Midoriya and Todoroki kids." He leaned against the wall behind the bench. "What kind of maniac breaks his own damn arm and leg?" You sputtered. "Wait, he did that to himself? Is he nuts? He had shattered his own bones for a fucking school event?" The rumors about 𝗬𝗏 had some truth to it then. They were nuts. "Oh, as if you can talk." Aiko glared at you from the corner of his eye, arms crossed against his chest. "I've seen you give away so many doses of your brain juice that you were an anxiety-riddled, sleep-deprived mess for days." "Okay, ouch, that was at least a year ago," he scoffed. "Did you come over with any useful information? Or are you here to make fun of me?" "I'm mostly here to distract you, so you don't get in your own head." You groaned, digging around in your pocket for the bottle and popping another pill in your mouth before discarding the bottle into the trash can across the room. "What happened to not being reckless?" Aiko gave you a stern glare. "I was in the nurse's office with Midoriya, who had shattered bones in his joints." You stood up, stretching your arms above your head and testing out some kicks. "I've got to knock Bakugou out before he has a chance to blow my head off my shoulders. So I've got to flood his system, and I'll need more than what I've currently got to do that." Unlike Tokoyami and Mina, Bakugou had the height advantage by a couple of centimeters, meaning his reach would just barely edge out yours. When it came down to it, you'd have to be close to him to land any sustainable hits. God, he had the worst mix of long and short range. If you were too far away, the two of you would stalemate, or he'd just blast you outside the rink. Getting too close would mean being in grabbing distance, and you preferred to have an unburnt face. His fight with Kirishima told you that he definitely had enough endurance to set off a chain of explosions, but your skin definitely wasn't as tough as Kirishima's, so you couldn't just stand there and take it. You hoped your leaner build would give you enough of an advantage in dexterity to dodge his attacks frequently enough to land yourself a win. Your hits didn't have to be the hardest you've ever thrown. They just had to make contact. This was going to be difficult. You might have bitten more off than you could chew with this one, especially considering you'd agitated him before your last match. On the other hand, you'd made it to the final four, and that had to count for something. You waved goodbye to Aiko as you headed towards the waiting area, doing your best to keep your rising anxiety at bay. Mick's voice screeched over the poor stadium speakers, nearly popping them. The final fight in the semifinals. You looked over towards the announcement booth, and Mike stood with his foot on the soundboard and mic in hand, next to the mummified version of 𝗬𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪. "Let the game begin," he screamed, his voice going partially shrill towards the end of his sentence. You shuffled towards the center of the rink as Bakugou circled you, his palms facing backward as explosions propelled him. Your quirk is damn annoying. He stopped in his tracks and shot towards you at breakneck speeds, open palm aimed at your face. Your right arm shot up to deflect his path as your head tucked down to the left. Not yet. His attack slid off your defense, and he let out an explosion right beside your head. You pivoted your left foot, going for a straight jab at his face, but he used the force of his explosion to shoot backward out of your reach. You'd overextended your jab, and unfortunately, Bakugou had noticed. Grabbing the shoulder of your uniform, he threw you back, hitting the ground with a painful crack, the force of it making your body practically bounce on impact. "Give up," he growled, palm inches from your face, heavy boot directly on top of your sternum, the steel toe of his boot dangerously close to your neck. "Shit, shit, shit, shit." Your hand shot up towards his, lacing your fingers between his and digging your nails into the skin behind his knuckle, drawing blood. You did your best to suck out as much oxytocin and serotonin out of his system as possible. His scowl faltered as his eyes grew slightly wider, and the pressure of his foot eased just slightly. "It's working." The sudden change of serotonin and oxytocin sent his body into a state of anxiety and fear. Using the opportunity you'd created, you detached your nails from his knuckles and went for his ankle, hitting as hard as you could manage, landing a hit on the upper bit of his ankle on the right side and just below his ankle on the left. A hit like that would have normally dislocated something, but from your awkward angle, and whatever the hell his boot was made of, it just made him stumble forward, still giving you enough room to weasel out of your uncomfortable position. You wrapped your legs around his torso and rolled, flipping him onto his back and giving you enough time to bounce back to your feet a safe distance away. Bakugou rose to his feet, looking down at his shaking hand and knees. "The fuck did you do to me?" He pressed his thumb into the palm of his shaking hand, wrapping his fingers around the back in an attempt to calm himself down. Chemicals rushed through your system, saturating your blood until all the pain in your body had disappeared. Your vision narrowed, blocking out all the sound and chaos around you. The only thing left in your sight was Bakugou. You felt insanely euphoric, invincible even. You started laughing, holding onto your shoulders. "Holy shit, this feels incredible." You lowered back down into a half-crouch, the muscles in your legs and arms contracting, ready to attack. "Come on, Kakin. Come at me." The smile on your face absolutely manic. You wanted to break him, and come at you he did. Bakugou fought like a caged animal, letting off chains of explosions directly at you without any true pattern. The two of you danced around the rink haphazardly, trading blows at every chance you could. You tensed the muscles in your shoulder, preparing for a right hook when nothing happened. You glanced down to see your right arm hanging limply from your shoulder, the fabric of your sleeve completely obliterated to your collar, revealing the multiple first and second-degree burns that littered the previously soft skin. You tilted your head to the side in confusion, as a fist collided with your face, knocking you on your ass. "Die." "Oh, shit." An explosion went off directly in your face, slamming your head into the concrete below, knocking you out in an instant. Your body lay limp on the floor as Midnight held up her whip and declared Bakugou the victor, her voice echoing loudly in the deadly silent arena as a small puddle of blood coagulated around your head. With every beat of your heart, your head throbbed. It felt as though your brain was expanding, colliding with the inside of your skull, trying to find any way out to relieve the building pressure. You moved your left hand towards your face, doing your best to block out the painfully bright LED lights. You slowly opened one eye, looking at the ceiling from behind the protection of your fingers before retreating back to the dark relief of your eyelid. You were moving like a sloth. Your limbs felt like lead as you used your good arm and legs to push you up the slightly elevated bed. You heard a knock at the door and your eyes snapped open and darted over to the door. "Oh God, bad move, bad move." Within a second, everything was spinning. The door curved and bent into unnatural shapes. The lights overhead swirled together and the floor stretched further and further away from you. You pushed the base of your palms over your eyes, trying desperately to not paint the room with your stomach contents. "You should be laying down." The room filled with the small thuds of Rivalry Girl's footsteps, and you felt her small hands on your shoulder and back, trying to guide you down the bed again. What? You swallowed bile and cleared your throat. Happened? You got hurt pretty bad, sweetie. I did as much as I could, but you need to get your stamina back up before I can help anymore. Rivalry Girl rummaged through drawers and piles of paperwork, returning to your side with more chocolate and an apple juice in hand. When you can, she set down your snacks on your bed. Eat these up. I've got to do some paperwork, but I'll be within earshot if you need help. The door closed quietly behind her. Guess this means I lost, doesn't it? You sighed, slowly opening your eyes to get your brain to adjust to the light level in the room again. Reaching over to grab the juice box, you felt your throat dry and tighten slightly. You took the straw out of its wrapping and tried to aim for the thin tinfoil straw hole as your vision blurred. You took greedy sips as your cheeks became wet with silent tears. The nurse's room felt claustrophobic, the lack of sound deafening and the white walls slowly closing in around you. You tucked your head between your knees and grabbed onto your dislocated shoulder, trying to become as small as possible, trying to block out all the light from your vision, to become so small you cease to exist. Your breathing turning shallow and quick, your heartbeat struggling to keep up as your head swam. Aiko's footsteps bounced off the walls as he ran towards the nurse's room. His sneakers squeaked against the tile floor as he came to an abrupt stop outside the sliding door. Taking a moment to gather himself, he deeply inhaled before opening the door and finally seeing you for the first time after your flight. Short, singed, cornflower blue hair laid haphazardly over your arms and shoulders, arm-wrapped and hung in a sling, legs trapping it against your body. Your shoulder, covered in burns and bruises, framed by the tattered fabric of your gym shirt. Holy shit! His voice came out small and hushed. He walked slowly towards your bed before carefully sitting down. As the bed sunk under him, you hurriedly wiped your eyes against your forearms, desperately trying to hide the fact you had cried. Hey man, voice weak and slightly shaken. What brings you here? You idiot. What the hell did you do? What happened to not taking too many risks? He looked down at his hands, flexing them in his lap. What? He looked you in the eyes. What happened to you? You knew what he was talking about. You knew he was referring to what had happened at the end of your match with Bakugou. You had always been collected, always clever, always calculating, always capable. But what you showed out there, that mania? You didn't know what that was. You didn't know who that was out there. What you did know was that it felt amazing and you hated it. You couldn't look him in the eyes. You stuttered. Yelling could be heard out in the hallway. You picked out Rivalry Girl's higher-pitched voice and a boom that was unmistakably Bakugou. Bakugou. Rivalry Girl's shrill voice flooded the room as Bakugou flung the door to the side. You were honestly surprised the door was still on its rails. His steel boots hit the tile as he charged you, jumping over empty hospital beds. What the hell did you do to me? Completely ignoring Aiko, he grabbed onto the tattered bits of your shirt and pulled you forward. Get off her. Aiko put his hand on Bakugou's chest, trying to push him back as you grabbed Bakugou's wrist. Move it extra, before I blast your ass sky high. His glare was absolutely deadly. This could turn sour fast. You let go of Bakugou's wrist and tugged at the hem of Aiko's shirt. It's all right. Could you wait outside? I'll be fine. You gave him a small smile. Aiko's hand scrunched the fabric on Bakugou's shirt slightly before his hand fell, and he headed towards the door. I'll be right outside. Call if you need me. Bakugou didn't even turn his head as Aiko slid the door shut. Let go. You stared him dead in the eye, all amusement gone from your face. You were so tired. The bags under your eyes felt like weights that comically stretched your face down towards the floor. Tell me what you did. His voice was gravely and dangerous, devoid of any sort of comfort or kindness. You sighed and leaned back, making your torso go limp and turning to dead weight. Bakugou staggered forward, slightly trying to readjust his grip on your shirt. Your head lolled to the side. What do you care? You won, didn't you? Tell me. The corner of his mouth twitching into a sneer. Look, I'm not exactly sure myself, you sighed. You knew you were going to have to confront this, but you thought it could be a personal and internal conversation, Not between you and a boy responsible for putting you in the nurse's office. Well, partially responsible. That ain't gonna cut it. He snarled, his eyebrows miraculously pinching even closer together, which hadn't seemed physically possible. Seconds ago, you didn't pull that shit in your other matches. He was watching me? The hell changed? You raised your hand, curling your middle finger, ring finger, pink, and thumb towards your palm, your pointer finger staying perfectly straight. The room was silent as suspense built. Seconds seemed like minutes before you poked him between his eyebrows. He swatted your hand away from his face, letting go of your shirt in the process, and took 2 or 3 steps back, like he was getting ready for another fight. It's my quirk. Yeah, I guess that, dipshit. His posture eased slightly when you showed no sign of wanting to fight him again, especially in your current, crispy condition. Are you like that half-and-half bastard? Half-and-half bastard? Oh, did he mean like that Todoroki kid? No, my quirk isn't an emitter quirk like that. You turned slightly to the side, propping up and fluffing your pillows to the best of your ability with one arm. Once you deemed them suitably positioned, you swung your legs back onto the bed and leaned against your neat pile. Not what I meant. He crossed his arms over his chest before continuing. Do you have 2 quirks? Nope. You wiggled into a comfortable position amongst your pillows, adjusting your arm in its sling. Bakugou was getting increasingly irritated, and it definitely showed. Enough with the evasive answers. In your fights, you knocked that pink bitch and bird boy out in a less than 5 hits. You hit me a couple of times and they weren't strong. Wow, rude, I scowled. But my reaction was different. So, tell me what you did to me. You didn't like the idea of telling someone about your quirks so quickly after your fight. You knew that eventually, people would find out, either because they would piece it together after some slip-ups, or when you got your hero license and they asked for medical forms. But with how things, Bakugou, currently stood, you knew you wouldn't be let off easily. I've got a sleep quirk. Tried to mask it as something else for an advantage. Not the full truth, but not a full lie. I hit Mina and Tokoyami to make it look like they got knocked out because of the hits. No. What? I asked you what you did to me. Not them. Your shtick obviously didn't work on me. Self-centered prick. I told you I don't know. You started to raise your voice so Aiko could hear you. Now I'm done talking. Because of you, I need some more medical assistance and some rest. Aiko picked up on your hint and brought Recovery Girl in with him. Bakugou, you should let them rest and heal up. The 2 of you can talk later. Recovery Girl walked over to him and placed her hand on his back to encourage him to leave. This shit isn't over. Got it? He sneered, shoving his fists into his pockets and stalking out. You okay? Aiko looked at you, worry all over his face as he placed his hand on your head. Yeah, I'm fine. You gave him a small smile. It sounds weird to say, but you had gotten off relatively easily in regards to your burns. You had been given time off school for your injuries to heal, and it had been about a week since the sports festival. Most of the pain had subsided save for a few places that still had thinner layers of skin or minor scarring. It seems that even in his panicked state, Bakugou had made an effort to avoid causing any third-degree burns, and the burns around your joints didn't need any form of physical therapy to heal. You cleaned them to avoid infection, but they did blister and scab like a bitch. You had just gotten out of the shower and wrapped yourself in a towel when your doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone today. You headed towards the door and looked through the peephole. No one's there. You opened the door slightly and saw a white envelope on the floor. Bending down to get it, you noticed there was a weird, round lump and UA as the return address. Oh, it must be about my leave of absence. You fiddled with the envelope on your way to the couch before tearing it open and pouring its contents onto a coffee table. A small round metal object slipped out and spurred to life, projecting Eraserhead's less bandaged face into the air. What the fuck? You fell back slightly into your couch, startled as Eraser started to speak. Hello, He looked down at something out of sight. Doc? He looked off camera and whispered, Does she have a last name listed? She just goes by Document. A familiar high-pitched voice replied. Looking back at the camera, Eraserhead continued, I'm Shoto Aizawa. Your performance in the sports festival and third-place position last week inspired the administration to re-evaluate your placement in the general education department. You swallowed the lump growing in your throat. As the homeroom teacher for Class 1A, I've been given the task of welcoming you to my classroom. Should you accept, you will attend class with everyone on Monday. Congratulations on being admitted into the hero course at UA. The projection cut off and silence filled your small apartment. You sat there with your mouth open like a fish, staring at the empty space where Aizawa's face was seconds prior. You paused, letting the news wash over you in waves. I got in. You jumped into the air and punched towards the sky. Fuck yeah. Momentarily forgetting that you were practically naked until your towel threatened to slip. Whoops, I should get changed. You practically danced through your living room and hallway towards your bedroom before closing the door. One step closer. You'd set your alarm unusually early for Monday morning. You wanted to be as prepared as possible for your first day in your new course. You had spent Sunday with Aya celebrating and shopping for school supplies since your parents had sent you a little extra money as a present for getting into the hero course. While you did have notebooks and pencils from the Gen Ed course, you were missing the hero course textbooks, and besides, a handful of new things couldn't hurt. The two of you managed to pick up all the materials you needed, even on the short notice you had been given. Aya brought up the point that you'd probably need more than the tattered pair of sneakers you wore everywhere, so you decided to pick up 2 new pairs of low-cut black sneakers that were surprisingly expensive. Aya had also tried to get you to replace your worn-out army green satchel bag, but the shopping day had gone on long enough, and the stores had closed before you could. Secretly, you didn't mind as it was a bag Aiko's father had given you. The canvas material made it incredibly sturdy. It was absolutely covered in pockets and had a deceptive amount of storage. You easily fit all your textbooks, notebooks, and even a small lunch inside it with ease. Where did I put my pencils? You muttered, lifting up couch cushions and kneeling down to look under tables. Found it. The white bag had sneakily hidden underneath the couch. You picked up the bag and flipped it over to see Mirko's signature flexing pose and hero name plastered on the side. While you may not have the biggest focus on heroes, you definitely had one hero you adored, Mirko, and your pencil bag reflected that. Tucking it into one of the outer pockets of your bag, you looked at the clock on your wall. 7:40. School started at 8:25, and you wanted to arrive about 20 minutes early to get yourself situated, so you were around on time. You took a few minutes to pack a couple of protein bars and snacks into your bag, and you double-checked that you had everything you needed for the day. You slipped on one of your new pairs of sneakers, tapping the toes against the ground, slinging your bag around your shoulder, and taking off towards the metro. 8:05. You knocked on the classroom door. I'm coming in, sliding the door open. You were faced with an empty classroom that looked very similar to your old one, save for a few details. The door was obviously different. It had a massive, red 1A painted on the front. The desks were arranged into 4 rows, 3 rows of 6 and 1 row of 3 up by the front, all with little name cards. In the back was a large 3-section TV screen over a row of 22 cubbies. The front of the classroom had a large blackboard with the day's schedule in the right corner and a podium on a slightly elevated platform and some sort of mail slot by the door. You wandered into the foreign classroom looking for your name. Here we are. You were in the second row in the desk closest to the window. You hung your bag on the side of the table and stretched your arms above your head, taking another look at the classroom. Somehow in your first look, you had completely missed the yellow sleeping bag poking out behind the podium. You abandoned your desk and walked over towards the mound. You knelt down and put your hand on the middle of the form, pulling slightly to roll it over. You fell on your ass as Aizawa's snoring face turned towards the ceiling. Your brain had completely short-circuited. My teacher is a caterpillar. It's the first day of class, and he's a caterpillar. You scooted back, kicking away from the sleeping man, trying to piece together why he was sleeping on the floor. Another knock at the door drew your attention, and Midoriya appeared, mumbling something to himself. You were still on the floor, leaning back on your hands, legs partially sprawled out in front of you when the two of you made eye contact, and he yelped. You brought your finger to your mouth and shushed him with great enthusiasm, eyes flashing back to the sleeping teacher. Doc! He pointed his finger at you, eyes as wide as saucers. You pointed right back. Hospital kid? You stood up and dusted yourself off before walking over towards him. You used your hand to partially block one side of your face as you asked, "Is Mr. Aizawa dead?" He was laying face down before I rolled him over. His hands shot up in front of him, waving from side to side erratically. "No, no. He just does that. Do you need to talk to Mr. Aizawa? What are you doing here?" He looked over towards the rest of the room. "Whoa, the desks are different." Aizawa groaned in the corner but didn't seem to quite wake up just yet, and the two of you lowered your voices slightly. Eraserhead always had eye bags when he did promotional material or interviews, but you didn't expect him to have such a poor sleep schedule that he would be passed out in his classroom. You also feared whatever wrath could come from waking the poor man up before you actually had a conversation, or at least homeroom with him. "I'm transferring into the hero course. Today's my first day, as you might have guessed." "Oh, you're transferring from the general education department, right?" Oh, he was really paying attention. You half expected people to forget who you were after the festival ended. You were really cool during the festival. I mean, you placed third, and you weren't even in the hero courses. To be honest, you weren't the best at handling compliments. Something about it just created this strange sense of discomfort in you. You sheepishly brought your hand to the back of your neck and thanked him. You placed fourth, didn't you? I saw a couple of your fights, including a playback of that one against Todoroki. You were really impressive. He turned beet red and stammered. "Thank you. I've definitely still got a long way to go, but it was great training." The two of you chatted for a couple minutes before another group of students wandered into the classroom. "Deku?" You heard Uraraka's voice and peered around Midoriya to see Kirishima, Kaminari, and Uraraka all standing in the doorway. "Oh, hello." "Yo." Kaminari and Kirishima both sent you big smiles and walked over. "What are you doing here, Doc?" Kaminari asked, tilting his head to the side slightly. "She's joining the hero course." Midoriya chimed in. "Whoa, that's awesome. You were super manly during the festival. I saw your fight against Bakugou. Did the advice I gave you help at all during the fight?" The four students had created a semicircle around you, and you took a small step back before bumping into a desk. "They've got a lot of energy for the morning." "Ah, thanks, Kirishima. And yeah, it really did help, thank you. Still slightly annoyed I lost, but I accomplished my goal anyway." You gave them all a small smile as more students flooded into the classroom. You recognized a lot of them, even if you couldn't pin down all of their names. "Who ya talking to?" Mina's head popped out from behind Kaminari. "Oh hey, it's you." She seemed strangely friendly towards someone who had fought and beat her a week prior. "What are you doing here?" "Oh Lord, don't make me do this for every new person." You heard rustling and the sound of a zipper sliding open slightly. "Leave the girl alone." Aizawa stood by the podium, still partially in his yellow cocoon and his hair going in every direction. "We had to change the seating arrangements, so everyone find your name tag." You took this opportunity to bow out of your previous conversation and head back towards your seat. You pulled your phone out of your bag to check the time. You had 5 minutes before homeroom, and the seat next to you was still open. Out of curiosity, you reached over and tilted the name tag so you could read what it said. Bakugou Katsuki. "You've gotta be shitting me," you mumbled under your breath as the door slammed open and the devil himself walked in. "The hell is up with the seats?" "Yo Baku bro." Kirishima walked up towards him and clapped him on the shoulder. You thought the man had a death wish, but Bakugou merely shrugged him off. "New student. It's the girl you fought, look." Kirishima pointed directly at you and seemingly sealed your fate. Bakugou's eyes narrowed into slits as he glared at you and stalked over. "The fuck are you doing here?" "Bakugou, behave." Aizawa's monotone voice rang over the now silent classroom. "Homeroom starts now. Take your seat." Bakugou scowled and plopped down in his seat. Aizawa shed the rest of his sleeping bag and kicked it to the side. You half expected him to sprout butterfly wings. He cleared his throat. "We've got a new student. Doc, stand up." You stood up awkwardly and gave a slight wave with your thumb, pointer, and middle finger extended. You competed against her during the festival and she got moved to this department. "Now, Ida, announcements." You sat back down in your chair, feeling a dozen pairs of eyes on your back. A boy with blue hair, sharp eyebrows, and square glasses stood up with such speed you were surprised his chair didn't rocket back and hit Uraraka's desk behind him. Ida's voice boomed as he drowned on about something you didn't really care all that much about. You leaned over to search through your bag, grabbing a fresh notebook, your 𝗵𝘃𝗃 pencil case, and tucking your phone back into one of the outer pockets. The first half of the day had gone by relatively smoothly. You were surprised to see that there were actual heroes teaching in the hero courses. You had guessed they would help with training since you've seen them around campus, but to have Midnight stand in front of the class, in her absolutely amazing hero costume teaching Algebra 2 threw you for a loop. There were a couple schedule differences between the two departments. The first being that you had 4 periods in the morning rather than 3, so your lunch had been pushed back by an hour. Something told you Aya wouldn't be too happy about that. The second was that, in academic terms, the hero course was slightly behind on material compared to the general education course, so you hadn't needed to take any real notes quite yet. Lastly, there was school on Saturdays. While at first the notion of only having 1 day off a week seemed like some form of child cruelty, you reasoned that it was to produce the best heroes they could. Perhaps sleep-deprived and slightly worn-out heroes, but still pretty good heroes. You would have to push back your training with Aiko from noon to late afternoon or early evening, but he would get over it. The bell for lunch sounded while Present Mike was screaming English verb conjugations at the class. "Hey, Doc." Mina's bubbly voice called from somewhere behind you. "Come eat with us." You looked over to see Mina standing slightly in front of 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗏, and that dude with massive elbows. "Oh, sure." You smiled at her. With the change in lunch schedule, you had accepted your fate of eating alone at the end of some random table, but your pink social savior walked over and grabbed your hand to lead the way. "How are you doing so far?" "Rather well, actually. I was worried more people were going to be, You paused, thinking of the words to express yourself. Bakugou-esque, I guess, but practically everyone I've interacted with has been really nice." Mina let out an adorable laugh, still holding onto your hand and swinging your arms in tandem. "That knucklehead gets us a bad rep. Oh, but do look out for Mineta." I definitely noticed. His speech at the festival was hilarious. You chuckled at the memory and completely glossed over whoever Mineta was. His name was in one ear and out the other. Mina groaned as the two of you got in the lunch line and she let go of your hand. That was so embarrassing. A couple beats of silence passed before you spoke. "Hey, She looked back at you with genuine interest, her black eyes somehow bright and shining. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Her head cocked to the side as she grabbed a Jello cup. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because I knocked you out for 12 hours during the first fight. Because of our one-on-one fight, I guess." Mina seemed like a genuine person, but with who you were surrounded by in your last class, that was hard to accept. It had been filled to the brim with pompous assholes or deeply bitter rejects. Half of your previous class did nothing but shit-talk and scrutinize the hero course classes. Every mistake they made was torn into and dissected by your classmates. When Class 1A had been attacked at USJ, almost everyone in your class blamed the students instead of the villains, as if they had asked for it, or it was somehow their fault. They would boast about how they would have handled the situation 1,000 times better than those idiots. They droned on and on about the ways everyone else was incompetent or pathetic. It was all a thinly veiled coping mechanism for their massive inferiority complexes from not making it into the course. Aya had been the only person who seemed genuine. She had been aiming for the support course but messed up her application, and instead of turning bitter, she still is working towards her goal and getting up her grades to transfer in her second year. Mina reminded you a bit of Aya, even if Aya was more of a worrywart. Mina slapped you lightly on the shoulder. "Oh, that? Water under the bridge. If I held a grudge every time I lost, everything would be so negative." You paused. "Huh. The people you were used to would take that grudge to their graves. To be fair, you even held a slight grudge against Bakugou after he blew apart your arm. You okay? You're holding up the line a bit." Mina looked at you with genuine worry. Why is everything she's expressing genuine? Is she even able to tell a damn lie? "Oh yeah, sorry. Just thinking." You picked your tray off the counter and followed her to a table. After a few minutes of small talk, she stood up and waved to someone behind you. "Kirishima. Denki. Siro. Oh, he must be the elbow boy. Bakugou." You choked a bit on your rice, hitting your chest with the side of your fist and coughing trying to dislodge it. 2 trays plopped onto the metal table on either side of yours, followed by 𝗵𝗃 on your right and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 on your left, sandwiching you between the 2 boys. "Hey there!" 𝗵𝗃 wiggled his eyebrows at you before you heard a thud under the table. "Ow! Mina!" He looked across the way at the girl smiling brightly and dragging a finger across her neck. You let out a genuine laugh at the interaction before 𝗧𝗪𝗏 grabbed your attention. "Ignore the dunce." 𝗵𝗃 made a slight noise in protest. "I'm 𝗵𝗃. Nice to meet you." He shot you the 1000th smile you've seen today, his teeth looking completely straight. "Hey." Kirishima dragged Bakugou over to the table and sat down next to Mina. Bakugou taking the spot directly diagonal to yours and staring into his food. "How's your first day going?" "Pretty decently. Mostly everyone has been super nice," Bakugou scoffed in response. "And it seems I haven't missed out too much academics-wise." "Oh, are you good with school stuff?" 𝗵𝗃 joined the conversation. "I think so. I placed pretty highly in my last class, but math and science are my strong suits. They kinda had to be, considering your quirk." "Whoa, really? I suck at those." "You suck at school in general." 𝗧𝗪𝗏 piped in. Deciding to ignore what 𝗧𝗪𝗏 had said, 𝗵𝗃 continued. "Could you, like, tutor me or something? Mr. 𝐈𝐧𝐿 yelled at me for our last test. You had some practice with tutoring from trying to keep Aiko afloat in his classes, and it could help you make some friends, so you thought why not?" "Sure." "Wait, seriously? Hell yeah. Wait, could you help us too?" Mina and Kirishima were practically leaning over the table and speaking in unison. "I don't see why not." 𝗵𝗃 and Kirishima high-fived across the table. "We've been trying to get Bakugou to help us, but he keeps saying no. Kakin is so mean." 𝗵𝗃 put on a fake forlorn face. Bakugou grumbled again in the corner. "Not my fault you idiots are unteachable." "Oh, come on. We aren't that bad." Mina pouted, puffing up her cheeks. "Shut it, raccoon eyes." Bakugou proceeded to dump a heaping load of peppers onto his lunch. You laughed. "That's all right. I'm up for the challenge." Bakugou's eye twitched at the mention of challenge. "What? You think I'm not good enough to teach them or something?" He dropped his fork in his food and crossed his arms. You blinked at him. Was he really going to raise a fuss over this, of all things? "Well, you didn't mind playing ball." "Well, considering you described them as unteachable, probably." You shrugged and continued eating your meal. Your time in the Gen Ed department had expunged any desire to sidestep people's inferiority complexes for the sake of making things easier. Whenever shitty behavior wasn't addressed, it was guaranteed to get worse. "Oh, I have an idea," 𝗵𝗃 exclaimed. "You two should have a competition." He looked towards Mina for support, and she quickly caught on. "Yeah, the 2 of you should both teach us, and we can tell you which one is better." It was an extremely obvious bait trick, but it seemed kind of entertaining. Not to mention you still had a desire to kick his ass in any way you could. The hothead probably couldn't even last 5 minutes if he got bombarded with questions. "I'm not an idiot. I see what you're trying to do, dunce face. Like hell am I going to play into it? Backing down already?" You gave him the most innocent face you could muster. You made your eyes slightly wider and eyebrows slightly higher than usual, tilting your head and cupping your cheek with your hand. "It's okay if you think you won't last long against me." It took every ounce of your being to not break your facade in favor of a wicked smirk. You could practically see the steam coming out of his ears when he yelled, "You're on fuckface." Oh God. Teasing him could be downright addictive. His reactions are so damn amusing. Mina, 𝗵𝗃, and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 tried their best to suppress their laughs, their face contorting hilariously. Kirishima, on the other hand, did his best to calm Bakugou down, the joke seemingly going over his head. You could probably tease him a little more. It's a date then. Perfect. The 3 lost any form of composure they had left and fell over laughing. 𝗵𝗃 was clutching his stomach and wheezing. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 threw his head back and almost fell off the back of the bench as Mina slammed her fist on the table, trying to breathe. You looked down at your phone to check the time. "I've got to meet with Mr. 𝗧𝗏. I'll see you guys in class." You stood up, carrying your tray and walking away from the howls of laughter and screaming Bakugou, telling the 3 to shut up and die. You felt slightly bad for Kirishima, but something told you he may have been used to this kind of situation. You wandered back toward your classroom, taking your time to look at the decorated halls around the hero course classrooms. Banners with the school's graduates adorn the wall, each barring hero names, rankings, and their graduation year. A little further down was a trophy case dedicated to sports festival winners over the last couple decades, including a picture of Bakugou. That's brutal. You had been rather incapacitated during the finals and following awards ceremony. So this was your first time seeing Bakugou's wild, almost panicked eyes trapped behind a muzzle. The kid looked like he couldn't breathe, and the image felt weirdly familiar in a disconcerting way. Sure, the kid had a temper, but he didn't deserve to be tied up. You leaned in to get a better look at the photo. Hold on. Did they tie him to a post? Are those chains around his arms? They're displaying a photo like this? You couldn't tell if they were trying to punish him even more by displaying the photo or simply didn't care enough to think of its impact. Either way, it made your stomach churn. You wanted to get out of that hallway. You turned away from the case and kept walking towards your classroom. You weren't exactly sure where your opinion on Bakugou lay. He was a stuck-up pain in the ass when you met, and he still presented that way. But you had brief glimpses into something else, something deeper, something he was trying to hide that betrayed his facade. It made you pause before completely judging him. He was surrounded by kind people. Even if he did get dragged along, that meant there was definitely something there, didn't it? Something you didn't know. Softer, maybe? Whatever it was, you wouldn't be able to figure it out in the last few seconds of you walking back to class, so you set the idea aside for later. Maybe you would ask him about it. More students had filed in after you sat down at your desk. Midoriya came back with 𝗬𝗧𝗏, 𝗧𝗏, and 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. A girl with 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏 cords at the end of her ears wandered in with a slightly blushing Kaminari. Mina came in with Momo and a floating uniform. Kirishima had been chatting Bakugou's ear off as they walked into the threshold. Everyone settled down relatively quickly as Mr. Aizawa walked up towards the podium again. Part of being a hero is your brand. The poor man looked so tired. So Midnight is going to talk to you about hero names. And that was it for Aizawa as he slinked back into his yellow sleeping bag and the R-rated hero sauntered into the classroom. Well, this is rather sudden. You haven't even had a real training session, and you already had to brand yourself and your career. Midnight gave an explanation about the importance of hero names and signifiers, saying that when you all became pros, it would serve as a symbol and make it easier for the public to recognize and trust you. Everyone was given a whiteboard and marker, and the class fell quiet. Subtle and hushed murmurs arose as people thought about their names. Bakugou had been the first to come up with his prospected hero name and stood in front of the class to present it. 𝗵𝗃, he boomed. You almost choked on your own spit when an involuntary laugh erupted from you, and your class shared the sentiment. Too violent. Midnight opposed. Try again. Kirishima's hand shot up. You should try Explosion Boy. You sincerely tried to keep your mouth shut and stifle your laugh. But without thinking, you piled on. How about Sparky? The class erupted again. The death glare that boy sent you as he stalked back to his seat was genuinely impressive. Maybe something like the Glare Hero. Killer Eye would work. You chuckled as he sat back down next to you. Sorry, it was just so tempting. Fuck off, dipshit. His stare glued to his now blank whiteboard. He's pretty fun if you don't take him too seriously, you thought, smiling slightly. A couple more people had their hero names rejected. Mina proposed Alien Queen, which honestly sounded kind of badass, but changed it to Pinky. Others had names that combined words or made an homage to other heroes, like with Kaminari's Charge Bolt and Kirishima's Red Riot. A girl with long green hair had an especially cute name that she had thought of in grade school. The rainy season hero, 𝗵𝗃𝗏, and when she announced it, the whole class's mood lightened slightly. Todoroki and 𝗧𝗏 had just chosen their first names for now, and Midoriya had chosen to call himself Deku. Bakugou had tried to revise his hero name to Lord 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗺, seemingly missing the point of why it got rejected in the first place. You had been slightly distracted listening to everyone else's hero names that you had forgotten about your own. I mean, I already go by my nickname. That could work. It's not very original, though. You wanted to put a lot of thought into this. It felt important. It was a chance to really define everything you wanted to be or represent, and half-assing it didn't seem right. You closed your eyes for a moment, searching through memories, stories, feelings, all trying to get some sort of sign or hint for a good hero name. And something came, but it wasn't what you hoped. The rapid change of adrenaline, insomnia, and stress in your system mixing together unevenly, erratically, and the feeling of mania that followed. The visual and auditory overstimulation before all your senses sharpened, targeting Bakugou. The look on his face after you had stolen something from him. It was his confidence, his image. You shattered it in front of him, even if it was for just a minute. Your eyes shot open as guilt flooded through your brain like a tidal wave. You shook your head trying to get rid of the thought. You tried to pace your breathing, covering your eyes, squeezing your temples, not noticing Bakugou's stare. This type of thing would happen sometimes. Intrusive thoughts. You believed that your quirk could amplify them, even when you weren't actively trying to alter someone else's hormones. It had been a long-term side effect of a stupid mistake. You didn't want to dwell on it for now, especially not in the middle of class on your first fucking day. Doc? Midnight looked towards you. Do you have a name yet? You startled, staring at the blank whiteboard in front of you, trying to recenter yourself and calm down your overworked brain. I'm undecided. Is that so? All right, let's move on then. Aizawa called your name while you were packing up your bags for your last period free. Come here for a second, would you? Slinging the green bag across your chest, you walked over to him. Yes, teach. How's the first day going? The two of you stepped outside and chatted in the hallway. It's going well. Your students are really kind and I'm in a good place academically, so I can focus on adjusting for now. Good. He slightly nodded his head. Have you had a chance to talk to a costume developer? Actual training for you starts tomorrow. It'd be a good idea to get a head start. The hero course really did want you to take off the second you landed. Oh shoot, you're right. Where do I find one of those? Aizawa yawned, covering his mouth with his hand and pointing down the hall with his other. First floor, first door on the left. Power loader should still be on campus. With that, he was back inside the classroom and leading the rest of the class to the training facility. Fucking hell, this was one hell of a long day. You trudged down the hallway, unwrapping one of the snacks from your bag and practically shoving the whole bar in your mouth. You rapped on the door a couple times before turning the knob. Hello? Popping your head inside. I was sent here for a hero costume developer? Hero costume. The sound of metal clanging rang through the classroom as a girl with pink hair and massive golden goggles popped up behind a desk. Her face was covered in soot and grease. Do you need a designer? Her smile made her look borderline nuts, but you respected the enthusiasm. I do. You held the last word slightly, eyeing her in the workshop. Can you help me? She shot to her feet, wiping her forehead with the back of her glove before taking it off and extending you a hand. You took it, and the sheer amount of force she put into shaking it practically moved your entire upper body. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, your new developer. Ooh, I've never designed a full costume before. This will be amazing. She was practically swooning. Name's document. You double-checked to make sure your arm was still in its socket. May started to circle you like a shark, humming. She rummaged around in the jumpsuit tied around her hips, pulling out a tape measure, pen, and crumpled notebook. Come here. She took you by the hand and dragged you over to a full-length mirror in the back of the classroom. The specialty course kids were really touchy. May slipped her hands between your arms and the divot of your waist and pushed your arms out to the side, aligning with your shoulders. Stay still. She repositioned the golden goggles onto her eyes and parts started to spin and buzz. The girl was all over you in seconds. She measured your wingspan, height, the diameter of your butt, hips, waist, chest, arms, thighs. Hell, she even took detailed measurements of each hand and finger. You did your best to stay as still as possible, even if her poking around your stomach made you slightly ticklish. She crossed her arms in front of her, grabbing onto her chin, mumbling to herself. I'm missing something important. My input, you mused. Yeah, that's it. So, what's your quirk? Lenses on her goggles flipped downwards, giving her eyes a froggish appearance as she wheeled over a stool. I can change a select few hormones in someone else through physical contact, but I feel the opposite effect. If I make someone sleepy, I'll get insomnia, that kind of logic. May nodded and hummed as she scribbled down notes. So you'll need something to counteract that, or a way to stock up on it, huh? Another lens flipped down, her eyes bulged. How do you feel about needles? Excuse me? You felt a slight fight or flight response kick up. Being stabbed was not on your agenda for the day. Look, look. She held up her paper to show you a sketch of her ideas. See the arm. She tapped her drawing with her pencil, drawing your eyes to the large clasp-like designs around your shoulder. These could have doses of those hormones you can work with. Shoot it directly into your bloodstream, and you're ready to go. You stared at her blankly before gently lowering her drawing. Maybe using something slightly less intrusive. Fine, fine. She aggressively erased bits of her notes. What about fighting style? I'm a kickboxer, so something to reinforce my wrists and ankles would be amazing. Uh-huh. Her head was nodding so quickly you expected it to snap off. You talked with May for another hour or so, workshopping ideas, color palettes, and experimenting with weight and prototypes she had already made. She had a tendency to try to bulk you up with as much tech as possible, so a solid 30% of your time was spent trying to explain to her that you needed to be able to move. Good. Great. May was sitting on the floor in front of you, absolutely surrounded by pieces of crumpled paper and eraser shavings. Standing to her feet, she walked towards you and put her hands on your back, giving you a slight push towards the door. Now get out, I've got work to do. That was intense. You dragged your hand down your face. Hatsune's absolutely unrelenting energy had basically drained your own. You dragged your feet down the hall into your classroom. It was about 5 minutes after the end of school. The door was still open, and most of the desks were empty save for Bakugou's. He sat in the classroom alone, staring mindlessly at his hand. Did he look peaceful? He was propping his head up with his hand and twirling a mechanical pencil in his other hand. His normally jagged features were soft. His scowl was replaced with a slight frown, but was obscured slightly by his squished cheek. The usual ferocity in his eyes had dulled and the lines between his brows were gone. You hated to admit it, but he looked rather handsome in his almost sleep-like state. You didn't want to disturb him. Apparently, your feet thought the exact opposite as you loudly kicked the door frame and stumbled into the classroom. You silently ground to yourself. Hey! Soon enough, the lines between his eyebrows came back as he scowled in your direction and scoffed. At least that was better than being barked at. You walked across the classroom and knelt by your hanging bag, grabbing the loose pencils and notebooks from your desk. The silence was unbearable. You felt Bakugou's eyes on your back, watching every movement you made. Once everything was reorganized in your bag, you stood up, phone in hand, and slung it over your shoulder and half-whispered, "I'll be going now." As you turned towards the door, Bakugou reached out and grabbed your arm. Wait. You swear your soul just left your body at that moment. You looked towards him and saw his eyebrows twitch as he was thinking of what to say. Yes? You did your best to hold off the slight emergence of an embarrassed blush. What the hell was this situation? You still haven't told me shit about what you did during the festival. So that's what this is about. You're really not one to let things go, are you? Bakugou's scowl deepened in response, and the grip around your lower arm became tighter. Guess not. Look, man, I still don't know. It's only been a week, and this is my first day in this course. I haven't even joined you guys for actual training yet. This man was sucking up your last couple ounces of energy. Once I figure it out, you'll be the first to know, all right? Now let go. I've got a train to catch, and I think you're bruising my arm. No, he almost snarled. No, what? You sounded exasperated as you tried, and failed, to tug your arm out of Bakugou's grasp. Bakugou snatched your phone from your hand, "Hey," and pointed it in your direction to unlock the Face ID. "The hell are you doing, creep?" You leaned in to grab it, but he just extended his arm as he swiped through the apps on your phone before finding your contacts. He pressed the add button and practically punched in his phone number and name before dropping your phone onto his desk as he stood up. "I was the one who you used that shit on first." He tugged your arm upwards, and you stumbled forward, slightly dumbstruck. "So I'm gonna be the first to see it when you figure it out." He finally let go of your arm, and it dropped like dead weight to your side. We're gonna train together until you figure that shit out? Bakugou grabbed his own bag and marched out of the classroom, leaving you alone and utterly confused. You scooped up your phone and looked at the contact he made for himself. King EM? Oh, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲. You chuckled at the name he'd given himself before deleting it. I think Bakugou is more fitting. You never set a time. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, tomorrow. 𝗵𝗃𝗃, 4. 𝗵𝗃𝗃? Oh, that's fucking funny. Lucky for you I'm free then. You decided you wanted to tease him slightly. Also, if you wanted my number you could have just asked. You saw the typing message come up a couple of times, but nothing sent. Someone's embarrassed. You chuckled before sliding the phone into your back pocket and heading home. Nothing eventful happened on your second day. Classes went by as usual. Having a BDSM hero as your math teacher was still slightly bizarre. You had lunch with Mina, Ciro, Kaminari, Kirishima, and an irritated Bakugou. Slight teasing ensued. You did finally get to participate in a training session with your class, though. Aizawa paired you up with Ojiro, who was dressed in a GI. He justified it by saying you could move away from just boxing and learn mixed martial arts, something Ojiro was really good at. The extra strength and limb his tail provided was a pain to deal with, and you just knew you'd have some pretty new bruises on your forearms from blocking the dude. Ojiro was bigger than you, but that didn't stop you in the slightest. You landed mostly body shots because you didn't want to fuck up his face, and you knew from personal experience that black eyes were annoying as fuck. You did miss slightly once, however. You tried for a roundhouse, but Ojiro stepped just slightly out of range. The second your foot hit the ground, you pivoted, sending a back kick that connected directly with the side of his face. Ojiro fell on his ass and cupped the side of his face as Aizawa told the class to go home. Throughout the whole fight, you saw Bakugou looking at you in your peripheral vision. You headed towards the girls' changing room and heard your phone buzz in the locker as the other girls filed in. Ooh, why were you smiling at your phone, Doc? Mina wrapped her arms over your shoulders, standing on her toes to manage. 𝗵𝗃𝗃? Who's 𝗵𝗃𝗃? Stretching out the last word in an almost singing tone. Huh. You put your hand over the arm around your shoulder. Oh, that's just Bakugou. Bakugou is 𝗵𝗃𝗃 on your phone? Like baby? She half squealed and a couple of eyes turned your way. You realized your mistake rather quickly. Wait. You turned to face her absolutely giddy face and put your hands between the two of you. His name is Bakugou on my phone. Bakugou. 𝗵𝗃𝗃. She hummed, still looking absolutely content with herself. Sure, babe, I'll keep your secret. She turned back to her locker, booping your nose. You dragged your hands down your face and smashed your face into the locker, groaning. You okay, Ribbit? You slowly opened one eye to look at Tsuyu standing in her hero costume. Yup, you let out a loud exhale and closed your eyes again. Yeah, I am. You lifted your head from the locker door and finished changing. You didn't really want to think about the possibility of, dating the loudmouth. Teasing and flirting were fine, but you didn't think starting a relationship with Mr. Anger Issues himself was a good idea. You're not going home, Doc? 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 stopped by your desk with Mina and a semi-blushing Midoriya behind her. You were in the process of unpacking your history homework onto your desk in the hopes of getting some done before your meeting with Bakugou. I'm using the gym at 4, so it's not worth going home. You give her a tired smile. Do you want company, Doc? Midoriya mumbled. Fuck off, Deku, Bakugou basically growled, glaring at the freckled boy. Mina turned towards you, eyes wide and adorned with a shit-eating grin. Oh, we'll get out of your hair then. Mina turned and smirked towards Bakugou, waving and wiggling her fingers as she dragged Deku out of the classroom, 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 not far behind. You groaned as you turned back to your algebra homework. Damn pricks. At least they asked to spend time with me. You pointed your pencil absent-mindedly towards him. You demanded it. He scoffed, a smirk pulling at his lips. Oh yeah? And who got your time, idiot? You huffed, only cause you chased them off. Not let me finish this damn history assignment before you hog up more of my time. Bitch. He chortled. Dick. You replied. A surprising calm settled over the almost empty classroom while you worked. You weren't exactly sure as to what Bakugou was doing. You heard rustling, pages flipping, and paper being crumpled, but your damn history assignment was taking up all your time. Why do we need to know the specifics of British heroes? 3:55. An alarm went off next to you, and you startled, nearly had a heart attack. Your words were quiet and breathy, as it basically spilled out when you exhaled. It was the same alarm you used to wake up in the morning, and you swore your body prepared you for death. Bakugou snorted. Scared by a little alarm, are you? He rose to his feet and grabbed his gym uniform and walked out the door before you could get a word in. Hey! You scrambled to put your work in your bag before taking off towards him, spare gym clothes in hand. Why did I agree to this shit? 'Cause you're weak and want to train from the best. The best? I don't see them. Your tone feigned innocence, and you brought one finger to tap your lip like you were thinking. Bakugou paused and turned towards you, hands slightly flexed, fingers curled. You little. You clasped your hands behind you and made a slight show of kicking your legs in front of you. We're gonna be late, you half sang. You knew it'd piss him off a bit, and he grumbled in the background. 4 o'clock. Holy shit, this place is massive. You gaped at the absolutely gigantic hero course gym. There were TV screens everywhere, all of which had menu screens showing off different major hero battles, sports festivals of years past, and a tab called Personal Review. There were rows upon rows of treadmills, every bench known to mankind, inversion tables, ropes, yoga and stretch equipment, power racks, barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, every fucking bell in existence, except the cows. Oh, about those dumbbells, you know, the ones for one hand only? Yeah, the lightest they had was 30 fucking pounds, which, sure, you were used to slightly heavier than that, but Jesus fucking Christ. You didn't even want to look at the heaviest weight because of how quickly 30 became 100. The back wall was a massive rock climbing wall that seemed to defy gravity. It genuinely had chunks of rock wall hanging from the ceiling you were supposed to jump to. You looked towards the back right corner of the gym, absolutely overstimulated, and you found some boxing equipment. You couldn't explain it, but a massive wave of comfort washed over you when you saw the familiar equipment. You muttered, "I've got to show this to 𝗧𝗄𝗧." You must have looked absolutely starstruck as Bakugou cleared his throat. What? You never seen a gym before? Looking utterly unimpressed. The fuck do you think a normal gym is? You turned towards him, mouth slightly open and your brows knit together in confusion. This, he said simply. You're normal now, too. He looked down at his phone to check the time. 4:05. If you waste time like this every time, I'll fucking kill you. Yeah. 'Cause you're intimidating and 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐻. You started towards the boxing equipment until he grabbed your collar and pulled upward slightly to stop you in your tracks. What's with you and grabbing me? Your arms were forced upward slightly because of the uncomfortable pull of your shirt on your underarm. In all honesty, you looked a bit like a cat being held up by its armpits. Stretch first, idiot. Do you want a cramp? He yapped. Was he concerned about me? Probably not. We did that and more 2 hours ago. Whatever, you sighed. I know when to pick my battles. You were pretty limber considering you were a boxer. Your joints had a little more space than average, so you could bend a bit more than an average person. You grabbed yourself a dark green yoga mat and tossed a bright orange one for Bakugou. You laid out your mat and did some simple, boring stretches, touching your toes, lunges, pikes, stretch in the arms, yada yada. For fun, you stretched into the splits and leaned forward to stretch out your legs, biceps, and calves, then doing some jackknives to round back to your core. Deciding to mess with him a bit, you turned towards Bakugou so that you'd be in the corner of his peripheral vision. You went into a simple bridge before using your hands to crawl forwards between your feet. You gonna help me train or what? He turned his head to look at you. His eye briefly looked from your thighs down to your head before huffing. Whatever, freak. Come on. No reaction? Boring. You reversed your steps, unknotting yourself and standing to your feet. I ain't here to be entertaining. Bakugou kicked a mat, letting it hit the floor with a loud thud before unfolding the ends. All right. 1 second, I've got to send a text. You shot a quick text to 𝗧𝗄𝗧, asking him to pick you up in 30 minutes. You cautiously stepped onto the same mat as Bakugou. What now? Bakugou lunged towards you without warning, one hand by his side in a fist, the other, palm open, coming towards your face. Fuck. Your arms shot up in front of your face for a basic defensive position. You dodge his open hand and hit his arm with your forearm, hoping to unbalance him slightly, and it worked. You moved to knee him in the stomach or rib cage, but his spare hand slapped it away. Both of you took a moment to regain your balance before a wicked grin took over Bakugou's face. He flexed his hands, igniting little sparks around his fingertips, before lunging at you again in the same manner. You braced. Smoke defiled your senses as explosions sounded behind you, and a burning heat exploded on your back, knocking you forward. You turned to fall on your back, bracing your hands above your head and kicking up and out, connecting with Bakugou's stomach and sending him back. A damn warning next time, will ya? You screamed, coughing up the remaining smoke in your lungs. The two of you exchanged blows. Bakugou used his quirk to zip through the air, propelling himself, and blast the hell out of you all at a distance so you couldn't touch skin. That doesn't mean you didn't get a good amount of hits in. You finally spotted an opening in his attacks. You sidestepped his explosion, spinning around to grab his wrist, send his body into your back, and flip him. You absorbed all the adrenaline you could out of his system, trying to control it more than you had in the sports festival. His back hit the floor, and you planted a foot onto his sternum, both your chests heaving with exhaustion. God, huff you. Your heart was beating at a mile a minute, a combination of exertion and excess adrenaline. He scoffed. In a second, he swept a foot from under you, landing face first onto the mat. You grunted as your arm was caught under his shin against your back, other wrist trapped by his boot, and hand in your hair, pressing your face to the floor. He leaned into your back, arm bending almost painfully backward as the air was squeezed out of your lungs. He leaned down slightly and half-whispered, "Got you," in a rough, exhaustion-riddled voice. "Doc?" "Huh." You craned your neck to the side, trying to see who was there. "Get the fuck off her." "Oh, Iko." "Hey, Iko." You gave him a little wave with your pinned hand and bent your leg to tap Bakugou's lower back with your foot. "You mind?" Bakugou pressed down harder on your back as he got up, as he scowled. You rolled over and rubbed at your wrists, sitting up with your legs crossed. Iko crossed the expanse of the gym, eyes dead set on where you sat, and Bakugou stood with his arms crossed. You held out your hand and Iko took it and yanked you up. Bakugou and Iko were exchanging stern glares. The atmosphere in the room turned heavy. You, on the other hand, were hopped up on Bakugou's adrenaline and buzzing with energy. "Who's the extra?" Bakugou quirked his head to the side, gesturing towards Iko. Iko basically growled out his name, refusing to take his eyes off Bakugou or his hands out of his pockets. "He's the guy I asked to pick me up." You put a shaky hand on Aiko's shoulder as a headache swelled in the back of your skull. Iko seemed to notice the shake in your hand as a frown set deeper on his face. "The fuck did you do to her?" "Huh." You looked up at him. "Didn't do shit." Bakugou's eyes became slits. He tensed at the implied accusation. "We trained." Iko took a heavy step forward, squaring off his shoulders. "You, obviously." "Hey!" Irritation crawled up your spine and itched at your brain. "Did something." "She's shaking." "I told you." You slammed a hand into both of their chests, pushing them apart. "Let me get in a word, will ya?" Adrenaline could make you a tad snippy, but you got their attention easily enough. "We used our quirks, that's all." Your tone softened and you turned your attention towards Iko. "I appreciate you worrying about me, but you should know better than to get angry on my behalf before letting me explain." You moved your hand from his chest to his upper arm. "But Dash," he started. "I'm fine. That should be the end of it." You felt your eye twitch slightly. He was fucking squashing you. Iko shot his hand out towards Bakugou, to which he swatted it away. "'Cause I fucked up. We can talk about this more on the way home if you insist, all right?" You sighed and dropped both your hands to your side, your heart still racing from what was definitely the adrenaline. "I'm gonna go change. I'll meet you outside." You headed towards your stuff, grabbing a small towel and your uniform as you saw a protein bar sticking out of Bakugou's pile and deciding to grab it. "Bakugou, I'm taking this." You yelled across the gym, waving the bar in the air as you walked towards the changing room. "Oi, you fucking bitch." I know. You ducked into the women's changing room and took a bite. Huh, spicy. Adrenaline is the fucking worst. Too much sweat. You walked out of the changing room about 10 minutes later, drying your wet hair with the towel laying across your shoulders. To your surprise, Bakugou was still there, looking grumpy as expected. You had done some breathing techniques in the shower in an attempt to decrease your heart rate and get the adrenaline to fuck off, so you felt more ready to deal with the two boys waiting at the door. As you walked up, Aiko handed you your bag and you thanked him, stuffing your gym clothes inside. You're still here? You questioned Bakugou, and he looked up from his phone. Took you long enough. Maybe saying you were ready to deal with them was an overstatement. Didn't ask you to wait. You crossed your arms over your chest. A muscle twitched on his jaw as he clicked his tongue. Same time, Saturday, he said through gritted teeth. Don't be late. I won't wait for you. He kicked the door open with his foot and stalked out into the hall with his hands shoved low into his pockets. Well, he's a character, Aiko stated, his top lip drawn to one side. You laughed in agreement as the two of you headed home together. You sure he didn't pull anything? Aiko was standing outside your apartment door. Dear God, you huffed? Yes, I'm sure. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got work to do. Good night. You slowly closed the door, heading to the couch and falling face down into the soft, black cushions. You almost felt a moment of serenity before your phone buzzed loudly in your bag. 1 minute, you groaned, fishing around for your phone. Is 1 minute of silence too much to ask? One message from Bakugou bitch. You slid the notification to open the message. BB, don't bring the extra next time. You, why not? You. His name's Aiko BTW. BB, don't care. Don't like him. Read 704. You dropped your phone face down on the table as you settled into the couch. You'd deal with whatever petty bullshit he was dealing with later. For now, you were tired and your muscles ached as you dared to close your eyes. Buzz. BB, the fuck? Buzz. BB, you are not leaving me on read. BB, oi. Maybe it was time for your phone to go on Do Not Disturb. So how was training? Mina stood behind you in the lunch line, leaning forward with her hand clasped behind her back. Fine. Do I want jello or pudding? Got a headache. Something fruity sounds better. You grabbed two. Oh, come on. You have to give me more than that, Mina protested, grabbing food for herself. Nothing happened, dude. We just trained. You mused, heading towards the metal lunch tables. I almost got him too, you grumbled, slightly bitter at the fuck-up you had made. Mina pouted as she sat down next to you, obviously disappointed in the lack of gossip. You had a few previous moments of peaceful conversation before a pair of hands slammed down next to your tray. You left me on read? Bakugou growled, eyes sharp. Mina looked at you, eyes wide, mouthing the words bitch spill. You sighed in defeat. Good afternoon to you too, Bakugou. You ate another spoonful of jello. And yeah, you were being a dick and I was tired. You lazily pointed your spoon at him, wiggling it in the air as you spoke. Still am tired. Do you even have a valid reason for not liking him? You talked to him for, what, 30 seconds? He's a fucking dick. Well, he's busy the next time we train, so don't get your panties in a twist. You had woken up at the crack of dawn today and didn't feel like entertaining Bakugou. You continued to shovel sugary jello into your mouth as he stood there, burning holes into the side of your head with the intensity of his stare. What? You looked up at him, cheek puffed out slightly like a chipmunk. Fucking bitch, Bakugou huffed before joining Kirishima and Kaminari in the lunch line. Soon enough, everyone gathered around the table, joking, telling stories, pulling up videos on their phones, and you sat there quietly eating to try to regain your energy. You had a bad habit of forgetting to eat. Couple that with a tendency to get majorly hangry, and it was a recipe for disaster. What flavor did you get? Kirishima turned his attention to you, the shine of his smile blinding, and you were reminded of the bags under your eyes. Green, you stated simply and jiggled it in Kirishima's direction. You okay, Doc? Kaminari crossed his hands on the table and leaned forward, eyebrows knit together. Yeah, just tired. You sighed. You've been doing that a lot recently. Sighing. wanting to change the subject. Anyway, you cleared your throat. I should probably get your guys' numbers if you still want me to tutor you. We've got finals soonish, right? Ugh, don't remind me. 𝗵𝗃 groaned as she dropped her head. There. You patted her on the back. Here, you unlocked your phone and slid it in front of her. Put your numbers in. Your phone got slid around the table from person to person, almost falling off the table before 𝗧𝗪𝗧 caught it with his tape. Bakugou? 𝗧𝗪𝗧 asked, sliding the phone in his direction. She's already got it, he stated. He looked entirely bored with what was going on while Kirishima and Kaminari sent each other surprised glances, and 𝗵𝗃 elbowed you in the side with a smirk. All right, give it here. You stretched across the table and swiped your phone away from Bakugou, trying to piece together who was who with the ridiculous names they'd given themselves in your contacts. You added them all to a group chat and sent out a quick text before naming the group, study, and everyone's phones buzzed. There we go. It's official. Kirishima beamed. Why the fuck am I on here? Bakugou stared at you with disapproval. 'Cause I challenged you, and you accepted. Unless you admit that I'm smarter and a better teacher, that is. You had the smuggest look you could muster adorning your face, and to your surprise, Bakugou smiled. It was a mix of unnerving and cute. No, not cute. Definitely not cute. What the fuck? We'll see about that, dipshit. His smile quickly evolved into a smirk and disappeared once he saw Kirishima looking. You coughed. So are you guys free after school Friday? I've got kickboxing tomorrow. Yup. 𝗵𝗃 chirped as Denki gave a thumbs up, and 𝗧𝗪𝗧 nodded. I know a coffee shop that'd be perfect. Kirishima texted the address to the group. The manager there is totally manly. All right, sounds good. With your plans made, the 6 of you made your way back to class before the bell rang and the halls flooded with students. Kirishima, Kaminari, 𝗧𝗪𝗧, and 𝗵𝗃 all walked in pairs, leaving you and Bakugou to walk together in the back of the back. You could have sworn you saw 𝗵𝗃 shooting you a thumbs up and a wink as she charged ahead of you. You better not be tired for Saturday. Bakugou huffed, keeping his gaze dead set on the back of 𝗧𝗪𝗧's head. It's just tutoring. It's not like I'll be running a marathon. He let out a clipped laugh. That's what you think. There's no way they could possibly be that bad. Oh, yeah? Raccoon Eyes and Dunce Face are tied for last in academics. Soy Sauce is only a couple spots ahead of them. Same with Shitty Hair. Shit, really? Yikes, maybe this would be harder than you thought. Alrighty then. Where do you stand, Blasty? Bakugou scoffed at the nickname. Real original. As if you could talk. I'm 3rd. You hummed. Make that 4th. I definitely place above you. Dream on, shortstop. Shortstop? Oh, how you wound me, sir. You let out a genuine laugh. A genuine, easy, amused laugh. Yeah, whatever. A small smile tugged at the corners of his lips. After a few steps in silence, he bristled and his smile faded, his face returning to something more serious. You figure shit out with that bullshit quirk of yours. A bit. And don't call it a bullshit quirk. You accentuated your point with air quotes. I was planning on using the fancy equipment in the gym to rewatch her fight. Not without me, you aren't. Told you I was gonna be the first to see it. Bakugou crossed his arms over his chest, jetting out his chin slightly. Keep acting like this, and I'll think you actually want to spend time with me. You weren't sure, but saying it like that hurt just a little bit. As if I'd want to spend more time with your ugly mug. Your briefly pleasant and playful attitude faded as you walked down the hall with him. Whatever, man. Okay, look right there. You pointed to the slight swell of your muscles as you rewatched your fight with Bakugou in 4K. Do you see that? I'm pretty sure that's when I used my quirk to take some adrenaline from you. You zipped forward a couple frames before pausing again. My whole stance and posture changed, and you got more sluggish. Bakugou grunted in agreement next to you. So how'd you do it? I think you tried to think back to last night's fight. Try to go back into your muscles' memory, putting yourself back into the fight. You felt how your muscles stretched and contacted, trying to remember what specific action or thought had worked. So your adrenal gland is the place that produces adrenaline? Obviously. I've taken a biology class, idiot. As I was saying, that gland is right above your kidney, so like in the middle of your stomach. You buffered through the video and stopped to show a kick you had landed on Bakugou's middle. I was focusing most of my attack around there, and it was taking up most of my focus. Maybe that has something to do with it. Bakugou stayed silent for a few seconds before nodding slightly. Possible. You said your main focus was melatonin before, right? You nodded. Adrenaline and melatonin are both made of carbons, hydrogens, nitrogens, and oxygens. Could be you just fucked up the numbers. I don't fuck up my numbers. Oi, not my fault you can't do anything more complicated. He rolled his eyes as you whacked his shoulder. Fine, challenge accepted. You slapped your hand on his arm and squeezed, thinking of the chemical formula for oxytocin and trying to absorb it out of his bloodstream. After a few awkward seconds of you semi-groping his bicep, you piped up. Feel anything? Besides you copping a feel, no? He seemed slightly smug, and you let go of his arm, making a show of looking grossed out. Well, thinking about the chemicals didn't do shit. Let me try my way. You moved your hand to his face, softly placing your finger along his jaw with your thumb on his cheekbone. The fuck are you doing, shortstop? Bakugou leaned away, eyebrows pinched together in confusion. Yeah, it's awkward. Get over it. I need to focus. Oxytocin comes from the hypothalamus, which is about. You dragged your pointer finger up towards his temple and closed your eyes. Here. You focused on how blood would pump through his heart, to his organs, and passing through his brain. You pictured oxytocin flowing out of his brain, through your fingertip, and into your own system. Holy shit. Your eyes blew wide, pupil dilating and practically encompassing the color of your eye. You'd been able to give oxytocin from your own system before moderately easily. Hell, you'd done it with Shinso and Ochako during the sports festival. But going through someone else's system? That was a lot more difficult, especially when it had to do with an organ as complex as someone's brain. You looked towards Bakugou and a furious blush took over your cheeks and you slapped your hands on them to cover it up, a move you'd seen Ochako do when someone brought up Midoriya. The hell did you do? Bakugou's pupils constricted, his breath was clipped and shallow. His heartbeat increased as a vague sense of anxiety welled up in his stomach and the hairs on his arms stood on end. Are you okay? You put a hand on his shoulder and felt the small muscles in his shoulder flexing and relaxing as he tried to calm himself. Undo it. Now. What he intended to be an intimidating, almost deadly tone came out more scared and desperate. Right. Sorry. You cupped his face with both hands and closed your eyes, holding him still as he tried to jerk away. You did your best to return him back to normal, balancing out both of your systems. Slowly you opened your eyes, expecting to see a pair of furious red ones wishing your demise. Instead, in your hands, you held an almost peaceful Bakugou. You saw the creases in his forehead smooth as his body processed your quirk. His long eyelashes laid peacefully on his cheeks. He looked almost beautiful as you felt his heartbeat slow. Did I really give him back all the oxytocin? I think my brain is still rose-tinted or something. You shook your head trying to clear the weird lovey descriptions your brain had come up with to describe the rough blonde. Bakugou's breathing was the last to fully even out as he opened his eyes. Suddenly you were struck at how vivid the red in his eyes were and how well it suited him. After a second you realized you were still holding onto his face like an idiot and you let go, hands practically swinging out to the side in your overcorrection. How? You swallowed. How was it? Poor phrasing. I mean, do you feel better? He stood to his feet, mumbling something about your shitty quirk, as the back of his knees shoved the chair he was sitting on back against the concrete with a painful screech. Bakugou? The door slammed behind him, and you were left in a weird sort of haze. After several beats of silence, you gathered your things, hands shaking slightly. What the hell was that? You stared down, focusing on your fingertips again. His skin was weirdly soft. You hadn't talked to Bakugou since your little incident. For the last 2 days, you weren't even sure if he looked your way. During lunch, he'd sit at the opposite side of the same bench, so you couldn't even see him. Whenever you spoke, he'd completely disengage, not sparing you even a millisecond. I do not get him. He offered to help me but runs off and ignores me? Who's ignoring you? 𝗵𝗃 just pops out of nowhere, doesn't she? Oh, no one. Just thinking to myself. You tried to wave your hand dismissively, but Mina's owlish eyes bored into your very soul. Bakugou is ignoring me. You mumbled, barely audible. Huh. Bakugou is ignoring me, and I don't know why. You sighed. Well, have you asked him? Mina cocked her head to the side. No. You hesitated, realizing how silly this situation seemed as Mina's mouth turned into a straight line. Oh, don't look at me like that. I haven't been able to pull him aside, and he's avoiding me like the fucking plague. Well, he is coming to the cafe with us for the study session. I bet I could talk to Denki, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and Kiri to leave you two alone for a moment. Mina flashed you a scheming grin. Honestly, I think I'd rather be ignored for the rest of my life. You sighed, closing your eyes and dropping your head forward. It's not like it'll get in the way of tutoring, you guys. I'll deal with it. You don't have to do anything. You started back towards your desk before turning your head and squinting in her direction. Actually, please don't pull anything. The glimpse of Mina's shit-eating grin was almost terrifying, but you only had 5 minutes before the next class, and getting squeezed to death by Aizawa's weird scarf for being late didn't seem ideal. So how far away is this place? Kaminari came up between you and Kirishima, slinging his arms around, pulling both of you down slightly. Kirishima pulled out his phone to check the GPS. About 10 minutes on the A train from here. Oh, it's closer to my place than I thought. You grabbed Kaminari's wrist and lifted his arm off your shoulder and patted his back. You're heavy. Rejected. 𝗧𝗪𝗼 yelled from a few feet behind you, and Kaminari looked back with an extremely over-exaggerated pout before standing still and waiting for the taller boy to smack him on the arm. So, Kirishima laced his fingers together and stretched his arms out in front of him. How do you feel about the, class? Something's weird about him. You tucked your hands into your pockets. It's been fine. You worried about whether I'll be able to teach you? Huh. Kirishima brought up both hands, waving them aggressively. No, not at all. You chuckled to yourself and put your hand on Kirishima's shoulder. I'm fucking with you, dude. Ah, haha. Kirishima rested his hand on the back of his neck, chuckling. You know, I can be pretty dense. When it comes to people, so it's best to be blunt with me if you're worried about something. You gave him a gentle smile. It's just that Bakugou has been a bit weird for the last couple of days, but he won't say anything about it. That's normal, but I'm his friend, you know? I wanna, make sure he's okay. Kirishima looked at you with a downcast, almost sheepish smile. Obviously, I'm not saying you did anything. I was just wondering if you knew something. He spent a surprising amount of time with you. We haven't spent that much time together. Dude, you've been here for, what, 5 days? He spent 2 days after school in the gym with you. It took everyone else so long to get him to not call us extras. Well, when you put it that way, I guess it's kinda strange. You looked up at Kirishima. The sincerity and concern etched into his face was a force unto its own. The kid basically had the world's most effective combo of, you can tell me anything, and puppy dog eyes. You let out a deep breath and lowered your voice, not wanting to be overheard by the rest of your group. He was super adamant on understanding how my quirk worked and got me to train with him, so he could be the first to see it or something. Anyway, we were rewatching our fight, and I tried doing something new with my quirk, and he stormed out. Oh, I forgot to ask. What is your quirk? I can mess around with my own hormones and someone else's. What about that got him angry? He was, I don't know, agitating me, I guess. Maybe teasing is a better word. Anyway, I tried to do something with oxytocin, so I got all hyper and shit, and then he got really anxious. I reversed it right after, but he hasn't talked to me since. What about this dude made you want to pour your heart out? You were wringing your hands, playing with each of your fingers for a type of distraction as you waited in the ever-bussing metro. Yo, Kiri, when's the stop? Denki's voice rang above the crowd, and you could see his bright blonde hair bob as he stood on his toes to look for you too. Kiri yelled back, next one. Make sure you got everyone on your side. The two of them were shushed by an older lady for being disruptive, so Kirishima lowered his voice as he turned back to you. If that's it, I think it'll probably blow over. He doesn't really like new things like that. Hell, I don't think the dude knows what anxiety is. You cracked a smile as you laughed, He is human, you know. I don't know, dude. Could you fit that much energy into a single person? Valid point. Why, shitty hair, come on. Bakugou boomed. Another woman told him to be quieter, and he replied with, "Shut it, Granny. You guys were fan favorites of the Metro." Yikes, I didn't even get a bad nickname. Kirishima hummed as the two of you weave your way to the opening doors. Not the best sign. Doc. Mina came over whining, draping herself across you in an unbelievably comfortable leather armchair. Bakugou keeps hitting me. A second later, Bakugou was up behind the two of you, whacking Mina upside the head with her math packet. Maybe if you fucking understood what I'm saying, I wouldn't have to beat it into you. Mina faked an exaggerated wail as she clung to you. Okay. You looked over to the table Bakugou was teaching at, and you saw 𝗧𝗪 laying face down on the table. We've been at this a while. Maybe we should switch. Bakugou? Fucking whatever. Come on, shitty hair. Dunce face. Bakugou grabbed onto the back of their collars and practically dragged them away. The two looked like they had the fear of God instilled in them. Eventually, 𝗧𝗪's zombified body made its way to your table, and after a few pets, Mina agreed to get off your lap. Math help? You guys are doing the normal algebra assignment, right? You got two depressed nods in response. Okay, show me the ones you had trouble with. The two of them pointed to the entire fucking page. Maybe this would be slightly difficult. Another hour or so had gone by and the sun was hanging low in the sky. The rustic-styled cafe was washed in a soft mixture of pink and orange as you explained to Mina that no, she couldn't drop out and become a stripper. You looked over to see Bakugou absolutely destroying Kirishima's homework with a red pen as he corrected it. Both Kirishima and Kaminari had rather sizable red bumps on their heads. You felt the tip of a pencil eraser tap your bicep. So like this? Mina asked. You looked over the work, double-checking everything she had done in your head as you worked through the problem alongside what she had written. It was perfect. Your smile stretched from ear to ear, absolutely encompassing your face. Perfect. Mina erupted in a mixture of joy and overtired tears, flopping back into her seat with her head flopping against the backrest. Oh my God, I thought I was gonna die. How the fuck did you make it make sense? An absurd amount of practice balancing equations. Hey teach, look at mine too. 𝗧𝗪 slid you his paper. 𝗧𝗪, you drew a dick. No, next to that. The math y bit. You hummed, looks pretty good, man. One small mistake. You just messed up the sign here. I think you have the concept though. Once Mina and 𝗧𝗪 had fully recovered from their math-induced brain death, they hopped to their feet and declared they would rescue Kaminari and Kirishima from the gates of hell. Mina basically threw a napkin at Bakugou's face, and then she and the boys made a run for it towards the cashier to order something filled with caffeine. Maybe now wouldn't be a bad time. You gathered up your stuff and plopped down at Bakugou's table into a much less comfortable wooden chair. Hey. What? Bakugou grumbled. Great start. You gonna tell me why you're ignoring me? I ain't ignoring you. He slowly met your gaze with a scowl. You crossed your arms and leaned back into the booth. Oh yeah? You've said less than 10 words to me in, like, 2 days. Are you gonna tell me what happened, or are you going to brood? Was it my quirk? A muscle ticked in his jaw as he clenched it, partially grinding his teeth. Your quirk is shit. I told you I was sorry about what happened. I didn't realize it would have such a big effect. Guilt made your heart heavy as you faced him. You truly didn't mean any harm. Sure, you wanted to fuck with him a little, but not this. You pushed the thought of the sports festival out of your head, trying to stay in the moment. Your quirk didn't do shit to me. His top lip was twitching into the beginning of a snarl. Was it something I said then? The fuck does it matter? Believe it or not, I'd like to get along with you. Surprisingly, I'm not the best with telling other people's emotions unless I experience them, or you tell me straight up. He exhaled loudly through his nose and closed his eyes. Jesus Christ, drop it already. Just get ready to have your ass handed to you tomorrow. So are we good? Yeah, whatever. Like I'd let someone like you control me. He looked over towards the cashier, probably searching for the Four Stooges. Oi, I can fucking see you. You turned your head slightly to see pink hair and yellow horns dart behind a conveniently placed bush. Fucking creeps. I'll kill you. You would have come to her rescue, except she did go through with the plot to get you and Bakugou alone. Even if it did help, she still deserved it. Bakugou scooped his stuff into his bag and took after the four eavesdroppers as they booked it out of the cafe. You tried your best to stifle the laugh that threatened to burst from you as you gathered up everyone else's shit and headed towards the sound of screaming outside the cafe. They sure were a handful, but maybe they were worth it. You were panting, loose fists held in front of your face. Your breath felt heavy as you took deep breaths, exhaling hot air through your mouth as your muscles burned with strain. Bakugou was in about the same condition. You could see the pronounced veins in his arms and the back of his hands from overusing his quirk. His flexed hands were by his side as he stood in a slight crouch, black tank top slightly torn from when you threw him. The two of you were in a stalemate, desperately trying to recover any bit of the energy you had expended beating the shit out of each other for hours. You sunk your foot into the thick mat below you, sliding it back and putting pressure onto the ball of your foot as you lowered your body slightly. You took off like a goddamn bullet towards him, and he reacted within a second. His arm stretched straight in front of him as he set off an explosion. Heat licked your face as you pivoted, swinging out your elbow and nailing him in the face, hooking your foot behind his ankle, tripping him as he stumbled. He groaned as his back hit the mat. "You move, and I'll kick you in the dick." A twinge of fear crossed his face as he slapped the mat, ending the match between the two of you. You fell backward onto your ass and flopping back as endorphins filled your system. Your arms stretched out to your side as you starfished, not wanting any part of your sweaty body to touch another. Bakugou was chugging water like a man who had been lost in a desert for a week as he tossed you a bottle. You lazily brought your hand up to catch it, and it just slapped against your open palm, landing on your stomach with a thud. "Ow. Pussy." Bakugou huffed. You made a gargled noise of disagreement and discontent as you downed the entire bottle. You dragged your body to the corner of the mat near Bakugou to rifle through your bag, pulling out a protein bar and a bag of spicy jerky. You lightly kicked Bakugou's thigh to get his attention. "Want some?" You held out the open bag of jerky, bouncing the contents. With a grumbled thanks, he grabbed a few slices and sat with his legs crossed. "It's spicy," you warned as you chewed on your own slice. "If you think this is spicy, you're dead wrong." He ripped the meat in half with his teeth. You chuckled. Somehow you being into spicy food is just so fitting. The two of you chewed in relative silence, sometimes being disturbed by Bakugou aggressively tearing into the meat like a hyena. You looked out the massive window behind you. You saw groups of kids working beneath the massive oak trees, friends walking together along the massive field. The sun was setting, and everything looked beautiful. Hell, the air even smelled like caramel somehow. "Hey," you started, slightly hesitant to disrupt the atmosphere. "What's the real reason you wanted to train with me?" You handed him another piece of jerky, kind of like a bribe. "Why re you pushing this? Why re you not telling me?" There was a beat of silence. "You can say that it's personal or if you're afraid to share it. But I'd like to know." You laced your fingers together and placed them in your lap. "Well, this is fucking awkward." Bakugou huffed, and you felt the mat squish under him as he stood up and headed to the showers. Before crossing the threshold, he looked at you over his shoulder. "The way you fight isn't complete shit." And he was gone. Was that a compliment? "Oh, that feels weird. Very weird." You felt heat creep up into your cheeks. "Guess the AC turned off," you mumbled, grabbing your stuff and half hiding your face in your towel. You didn't think a shower could be as nice as the one you were taking right then. The water pressure? Perfection. Temperature? Fucking immaculate. The second the water hit your shoulders, stress just left your body. You hadn't had the time before to actually enjoy the shower. You wanted to get out quickly to make sure someone didn't end up in a puddle of blood. This time, however, you found the nice soap too. Steam filled the room, and you washed away the evidence of hours of physical labor, massaging the soap into your muscles and taking a moment for yourself. When you emerged from what seemed like a religious experience, you practically floated out of the changing room in a cloud of bliss. The mix of tiredness and relaxed joy gave you a goofy, half-present smile. "Rich people school is nice." You changed into a baggy black hoodie and a pair of shitty old leggings because you expected Bakugou to be long gone by the time you came out. Instead, he was sitting on the bench in gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt with a graphic skull. You stared at him in semi-disbelief until he looked up from his phone. Jesus, how long do you need to shower? He shoved his phone in his pocket and chucked his towel at you. It hit you in the face with a wet slap, and you almost gagged before sending it right back to him. First, disgusting. Second, I could have taken longer. They just didn't have a hairdryer. You pushed the door open with your hip and made your way out into the hall. Why'd you wait anyway? And let your dumbass fuck up the gym? Nope. Pretty weak excuse, man. You teased. Maybe you just like me, you sang. Bakugou shoved his hand in your face and pushed you away as you laughed. You're insufferable. Yet here you are, suffering in my presence. You smirked as Bakugou clicked his tongue and looked away. Why'd you join the hero course? The question surprised you. Showing an interest in me, Figuring you out. He explained. Everyone else goes on about their reasoning. You haven't said shit. I want to fix something. You admitted. And this is the way for me to do that. There was something about the rhythmic footsteps, the seemingly endless hallway, and how tired you were that made talking and sharing things somewhat easier. So you're not trying to be a hero then? I didn't say that. There's just something I need to do first. Someone I have to pay back. Bakugou gave a slight nod and a huff. You want to be the number one, right? I remember your little speech. Gonna surpass All Might, he said, completely serious and completely deadpan. You know, All Might is nice to people, right? You teased. Oi, I'm fucking nice. You let out a laugh. Maybe to someone who gets to know you. Oh, maybe you should practice a smile like his. You should smile more. You said the last sentence in the sleaziest manner you could, trying to emulate a catcaller. I said I wanted to surpass him, not replace him. I'm doing this shit my way. Honestly, that seems rather fitting for you. You hummed as the school gates closed behind you. I think you can do it. You've got the power and passion for it. You should still work on your people skills, though. You couldn't only compliment him. It went against your moral compass. Doc. Mina and Kaminari screamed as they slammed into you, grabbing onto your arms and torso for dear life. Finals. Mina sobbed and buried her face into your chest. The math final is tomorrow. I'm going to die. I don't want to miss the field trip. Kaminari sniffled and looked at you with tear-filled eyes from his position hanging around your neck. When Aizawa kills me, clear my search history. What happened to the shit I taught you? Did you forget it already? The whole scene looked like a Renaissance painting. Baku bro, come on. Please. Be a friend. Fuck off. I'm not tutoring you again. Dude. Why? Oh. Hey Doc. You used your free arm to give him a small wave. Little help? Kirishima peeled Kaminari off your arm. You lightly pushed back on Mina's horns to dislodge her from your tits, but she refused to let go of your waist. What type of shit are the idiots up to now? Bakugou grumbled. Kaminari and Mina gave you the world's most effective puppy eyes, lip quivering and all. Oh, speaking through your yawn with a hand covering your mouth, you continued. I guess tutoring them again. The air was squeezed out of you as Mina held you in a death grip of a hug. Want to join Kirishima? Hell yeah. I'll ask Zero too. He cheered. Sure. Bakugou? I can bring more jerky. Think you can buy me over with that mild shit? You gave him a dead-eyed stare. You ate almost all of mine 3 days ago. I'm studying by myself. Now move, you're blocking the machine. I'm hungry. Bakugou shoved past the four of you and towards the vending machine. Once Mina finally detached herself from you, you looked down at your shirt to see a massive tear stain on your white shirt perfectly centered in between your boobs. Interesting. Luckily enough for you, it wasn't enough to make your shirt see-through, but Mina's mascara definitely rubbed off. I'm sorry, I'll wash it. Mina sniffed and went for your buttons to undo them, obviously still frazzled and semi-brain dead. But you caught her hands. Mina, we're in a hallway and it's fine. I can cover it with the tie in my bag. She sniffled in response, and you pat her head. You'll be fine, idiot. You smiled, popping a couple of dollars into the vending machine and grabbing a bag of Jolly Ranchers. I can stay after school today, so meet me in the library in, like, 10 minutes. I have to take care of something first. You waved with a soft smile on your face until you rounded a corner, heading out to the grass next to the library. Your nerves were on fire. Aizawa had held nothing back in getting you up to speed in training. You had to use your quirk repeatedly, over and over in tiny increments to help with your control of it. Match that with the breakneck obstacle courses and rescue mission prep, it was a long day. Your head was pounding from quirk overuse, and you could feel anxiety practically crawling over your skin, from your toes to the crown of your head, and sleep weighed on your eyelids. You had hoped to slip away after training, take some 𝗵𝗃 and knock out for a couple of hours since you had studied for finals over the weekend. You leaned against the side of the building, sliding down to the floor, taking note of your breathing. You took long, measured breaths, curling your hands into the fresh grass beneath you. Opening your eyes slowly, you noted 5 different things you could see, 4 things you heard, something you could touch. Like magic, you were grounded again, your heartbeat slowing, shoulders relaxing, and your breathing regulating itself. The fuck are you doing, dipshit? Bakugou was staring at you from around the corner, looking utterly bored and irritated. What the? And just like that, your heartbeat spiked as Bakugou scared the living shit out of you. How long have you been there? Relax, it's been a minute. Heard you mumbling to yourself like fucking Deku. The utter disdain on his face when he mentioned Midoriya was somewhat amusing. I swear to God you pop up at the worst times. You dragged your hands down your face before lightly slapping your cheeks to snap you out of your funk. And I was doing something to help with my quirk. Mumbling? No. You looked at him slightly annoyed. More like meditating. You cleared your throat as you dusted off your pants. I'm gonna go inside and wait for our 4 stooges. Oh, and next time, you punched him in the shoulder. Don't fucking scare me like that. Almost jumped out of my skin. You pushed past him, more than a little annoyed that your moment had been very rudely and very loudly disrupted. You grumbled as you claimed a table moderately close to the door and partially obscured by the massive bookshelves that called the library home. You'd put Mina and Kaminari in seats so they couldn't see the door and get distracted because there's a high likelihood their thought process was just loose word association. You claimed the plushest armchair imaginable and sat cross-legged with your knees leaning on the arms. You leaned forward, resting your elbows on the table and massaging your temples. Your sinus thought thingy helped with your heartbeat and anxiety, but did jack shit for your headache and sleepiness. Oh God, this is going to be long. As you explained the Pythagorean theorem to Kaminari for the 7th time, you started to understand why Bakugou had physically assaulted the 4 of them in the cafe. Okay, one more time. Maybe this will help. You leaned over the table and started to write a math equation upside down for him on his paper. Aizawa will probably want you to prove the formula, so think 3, 4, 5. When you add 3 squared to 4 squared, you get 5 squared. 9 plus 16 equals 25. Now when do you use it? 4 circles? Your head hit the table with a loud slam. Circles don't have sides, Mina. Triangles, right? 3 letters, 1 for each side. You rustled loudly through your bag of Jolly Ranchers and tossed him one, your head still fully stuck to the table. Nice one, 𝗧𝗪. Fuck yeah, green apple. The wooden table squeaked as you rolled your head to the side to look up at Kirishima. Have you guys covered matrices? Matrices? One less thing I have to explain. This same pattern continued for about another 2 hours. The 4 of them would work and ask you questions one at a time as they reached different problems. Hey, can you look this over? Kirishima slid you his paper filled with polynomials, and you went through marking it with your pen. Specifically this one. Are you okay? You look kinda dead. The slightly childish nature of the note, mixed with his consideration of you probably not wanting to distract the other 3, made you smile. You scribbled back a response. Tired is all. Long night. You're pretty good at polynomials and exponents, Kirishima. You wiped some sleep from the corner of your eye. It was getting harder and harder to stay awake. Mixed at the soft yellow-orange light and dark chocolate bookshelves, this place was the ideal napping spot. You've got a solid understanding of the the equations. Double-check your numbers before you turn anything in. You might be able to help them now, but you hoped they'd make peace with the Grim Reaper, 𝗧𝗏. Once they got to probability and sequences.
Nice.
Kirishima was hushed by an elderly librarian. Nice, he said in a smaller voice. You chuckled and rested your head on your arms, leaning over the table. Tap me when you have a question. You weren't exactly sure when it was, but you had dozed off. Heavy eyelids raised and you looked out the window and everything was dark. A deep violet muting all the greens and blues that cover the schoolyard during the day. You lifted your head, rubbing your eyes and wiping off a tiny bit of drool onto your sleeve. As you slowly sat up, an extra jacket slid down your back. You held the jacket in both hands, before folding over your forearm, letting it drape across your legs. Kirishima, 𝗧𝗍, Kaminari, and Mina had left you a pile of goodies and notes. Mina had left a massive Snickers and a note covered in little drawings and hearts. Kaminari gave you a powdered and a declaration that his funeral would be postponed since he no longer expected to die because of finals. 𝗧𝗍 gave you a pack of, hopefully normal, gummy bears and the word boobs and numbers, to which you did chuckle. And Kirishima gave you a protein bar and a message about how being smart was manly. It was all rather on brand for the four of them. You lifted the jacket up from your legs and looked at the tag inside the collar, hoping someone's mom had written their name, but there was nothing. It was probably Kirishima. It'd be the manly thing to do.